Twisted Sister about then? Well, it's simple. We're just about having a good time. That's all. We just like to have a good time. We like to forget about work. We like to forget about school. We like to forget about home problems. We like to forget about everything except the party. And we party hard. We party 7 days a week. We don't say, thank God it's Friday. And we ain't got Saturday Night Fever. When you're Twisted Sister, when you're rock and roller, you got 7-day-a-week fever. Am I right?
My days in Peacock, P as in P, C as in cock, those of you on the left can see the P, those of you on the right can see the cock. That's what the keyboard player used to say. Peacock had a thing, since we were doing 5 sets a night, they adjusted their performance and their act and the way they dressed by how many people were there. So the first set, which was early on, there weren't a lot of people, they would just wear street clothes. As the people arrived, they'd put more into it, we'd get dressed up, and as the night waned, the costumes would come off and it was jeans. And if it was a really bad night, the stage clothes never came out, and they would just stand around, and the act was weak. And I realized that this was no way to build an audience and build audience loyalty. And I realized that, the nights that there were less people were the nights where it was even more important to be great. Because how could you expect those people to go and tell other people that they had to come back if they saw something less than stellar, if you were phoning it in? So from day one with Twisted Sister, I brought this ethic of 100% every night, 110% every night, no matter what. You dressed up if nobody was there. You put your makeup on if nobody was there. You gave your all if nobody was there. And it worked. It worked quickly. 10 people came to see us, 5 people left screaming because we were obnoxious as hell. But the 5 people that stayed, they were dedicated, and they would come back the next time and bring their friends.
We got a lot of our friends. We got a lot of our friends here, right? Can I see your friends? Let me see your friends. We're our friends! You still ain't my friend. You're still not my friend, huh? I'm gonna work so hard to make you my friend. Because I see you sitting there, and you're just saying, I want to be your friend. So I'm gonna work real hard to be your friend. And if in the next few songs, you're not my friend, fuck you.
That all said, for a very long time, I harbored the idea that I was beautiful. I wanted to be beautiful. I wanted to be classic transvestite behavior, actually. I wanted to be pretty. I wanted to be attractive. I didn't want to be what I knew inside I was. And I was desperately trying to be pretty. So what I was doing was designed to make me beautiful. But eventually I realized the truth and embraced the truth.
And we first started doing makeup, it was more feminine, and they were more like women. As I started to see the band's personality and where they were really going, what they were really about, I realized one day that it was no longer makeup, it was more war paint. These guys went through their career and their shows like it was a fight for their lives. And everything they did like that. It wasn't pretty, it was not feminine, it was hard. It was rock and roll, and it was dirty. And it occurred to me, as we were making all these feminine clothes and they were wearing makeup like women, I was trying to make them look pretty, I realized that they're not pretty. They're monsters, and this was an ugly world, and they were out to do damage. And when they would get on stage, it wasn't like, oh, we're going to go jam and we were going to make music. They were out for fucking blood. And it was blood. It was serious.
I remember one time a guy came up on stage, and we all stood around the guy, and the guy cowered in fear, because we were all like 6'7" with heels on. You don't want to fuck with a transvestite with heels, because you don't know what they're capable of doing. It's dangerous.
Bands were expected to be human jukebox, regurgitate the hits, play the music people want, but not too loud, so they can talk and pick up guys or girls that do what they do. And Twisted Sister from day one refused to be that band. We didn't care who was there, who wasn't there. You were going to watch us. You were going to be aware of us, and we would do whatever it took to get your attention. And that sort of grew and grew into our act, into our audience participation thing, to the audience lights, to the, to the onstage ramps. Everything was designed to make you pay attention to the band. If you came to meet girls or came to meet guys, you came to the wrong place. Or at least do it when we're not on a stage. Because when we're on, we demand total your audience, participation and audience attention. Nothing less.
About 50% of you said yeah, and the other 50% of you stand there trying to wait for the pinball machine. Asshole, you could play pinball in a shopping center for free, not pay $3 or $4 to walk in a fucking club. That is stupidity, jerks, I'm gonna ask you one more time.
There he goes, insulting another minority.
Maybe you didn't hear me.
As we started playing larger rooms, we kept on adding more and more gear, to fill it up. I look back at some of the pictures and the bars of what we were carrying towards the end, and it looked bigger than most touring professional bands. We were talking a wall of I remember at one point 6 and like 12 stacks, 6 on each side for a bar. It's kind of crazy. However, the impact to the fans was overwhelming. We would give you a little piece of heaven in a bar. You come to see Twisted Sister in a bar, and what you got a full-bore rock show. And our crew really got into it. Our sound man, Charlie, really got into it. As we would show up in these venues, we'd show up with all of our equipment, and they would do their best to get it up on the stage, regardless if there was room or not.
The PA was everything. I mean, clubs didn't have their own PAs. When you went into the city, the clubs had the PAs there. But you wanted to be a successful, band on the circuit here, you had to have a big PA. And so that was, part of the deal. You went and did whatever you had to do to get one. And all the big bands did. Rat Race Choir's PA was the quad system, I don't know how actually quad it was, but there were 4 sets of speakers. And, the bigger the better. Everybody, it definitely was a big part of it, yeah. It really wasn't overkill. It was a concert. I don't think any of the PAs were too big for the buildings they were in. I think they were, for the time, they were what you needed. If you were going to be competing with, the bands that were coming into Nassau Coliseum and big groups, and you wanted people to come out and see you on a consistent basis, you needed to have a big sound. And that was, anybody that was saying it was overkill just wasn't, going to let the reality of it creep in. No matter how good you are, people have to see you and hear you. Oh, I went to CBGB's and not to play, just happened to be down there and went in, and there was a band playing. It was a 3-piece band, and they were horrible. I mean, talent-wise, they were terrible, but they sounded amazing, and it just reinforced what I had thought all along. You have to have the PA. So I could actually sit there and listen to them. It wasn't so obnoxious. The sound man had to sound great. And even though they were out of key and the guitar was slightly out of tune and the band just wasn't, the tempo wasn't right, it was enjoyable, And so the PA really makes a big difference, You can be the greatest band in the world, but if you sound horrible, the PA's horrible, it doesn't matter. Nobody wants to hear.
We would use any device to connect with people, to get a response, to get the reaction we wanted. And, and I always thought that was part of the idea of the makeup and the costumes and the outrageous behavior was, you're afraid to react because you think people are going to laugh at you. Who the fuck is looking at you? You really think anybody is looking at you when this yellow fucking banana is up here with a bow tie? And, and people would go wild. But that, and I felt that was part of my job, to get people out of their shells, and it actually became part of the show. To talk about people being afraid not to react, I also just found out that a Twisted Sister show was like a Rocky Horror show, picture show. You went there knowing you had to do certain things at certain times. You were told, listen, we're going to see Twisted. You better, You know, if D says throw your fists in the air, D says scream, D says jump, do it, or you're going to be the victim. You could be the target. And, you know, woe be the person who was not informed or didn't get the memo. You know, I was not above, you know, stopping the song and demanding the type of response I wanted from the audience, insisting on a reaction from the audience, and to, you know, re-stopping and re-ending the song repeatedly. I think one of my greatest, my most brilliant reaction getters of that type, where I discovered a sprinkler head directly over where I was standing, and I got a lighter, and I held it to the sprinkler head, and I said, "If you do not respond, we're all getting wet." And slowly moved it closer and closer, and the crowd got louder and louder. And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know if that's good enough." And then please, so I had everybody losing their minds. The calling people out in the audience, singling people out, putting flashlights on them, spotlights, audience lights, which people didn't have. I think that just, again, evolved because it worked. You know, you got rid of what didn't work and you kept with what worked. But it also satisfied a certain anger I had. You know, in high school, you know, I was never a popular kid. And so I just hated those people and wanted to attack those people, and discovered that there was more of the me's in the world than there was of the cool people. The cool people, the popular people, were a minority. And all the rest of us, the masses, were just average Joes who weren't particularly great looking or popular or didn't fit in. And there was a tremendous unity, a tremendous connection between me and them. I identified with them. Where other bands really focused on the girl thing, the sex thing, I had my girlfriend. I was very into Suzette. So it kind of seemed redundant to sing songs to girls when I had the girl in my mind, and it just didn't make sense. It didn't come off genuine. But to sing songs like "Shoot 'Em Down" and, you know, and "You Can't Stop Rock and Roll" and "Under the Blade," and these songs that I could just get my venom and my anger and frustration and target people and just fixate on things that I hated. Not only was it worked great for me, it's very cathartic, but the audience really connected with that with me. They really identified with this suburban, not popular in the band, but just the average Joe who was pissed off at the world for trying to shit on him.
Sometimes that angst is a real necessary component, especially in rock and roll, to me at least. You know, rock and roll without anger is not rock and roll. Of course, we had a lot of anger. D had a lot of anger, and he knew how to express it. I mean, you could define Twisted almost as a positive release of anger.
You let a lot of your aggressions out. If you're pissed off during the day, you usually go out at night and you basically work all your anger out. And it was a stress relief, basically. You're laughing. It was.
Going to see Twisted Sister, we had met a lot of people, especially in the beginning. There weren't that many people going all the time. Dominic was one of those people that we had met. And he was in school one day and talking to one of his friends about Twisted Sister, and his teacher apparently overheard. And she came up to him and said, "Do you know Twisted Sister?"
I gotta tell you one thing. Something very strange happened to us last week. One of the fans of ours came up to me, and he brought me a letter. And the letter was on official Board of Education stationery. And I asked him what this whole thing was about. And what he told me was he worked in a delicatessen in Queens, and he was discussing Twisted Sister with a friend of his over the counter in the middle of a bologna sandwich. And a woman walked over to him and said, "Do you know Twisted Sister?" And he says, "Yeah, I see them a lot."
And he goes, "Yeah, we see him a lot. We talk to the band a little bit here and there."
He says, "Well, one of the people in the band, one of the guys in the band, I used to be a supervisor for him in junior high school."
And she said, "Well, JJ used to be a student of mine. Do you think you could possibly get a T-shirt from the band?" And he said, you know, I'll ask him and I'll tell JJ when I saw him. So again, we saw Twisted pretty much every weekend. So next weekend he was there. He mentioned it to JJ. JJ was floored. Apparently he and his teacher did not get along.
This woman expelled me from junior high school in 8th grade for cursing at her. And because of her, my education went right down the tubes and I dropped out. Now, the funny thing about it is that this woman typed me a fan letter, and the fan letter went something like, JJ, Twisted Sister, the reason why you gave this letter is I was in a delicatessen and your friend Dominic was telling me he knows you, and I just want to tell you that I've been reading about what you've been doing. Now, you gotta dig this, okay? I was shocked that I got the letter, but the P.S. was what killed me. You gotta dig it. This woman expelled me for cursing at her in 8th grade. She asked me for a T-shirt.
He really was kind of amazed. His teacher even, I think, remembered him, let alone was asking for a T-shirt.
She told me I was gonna be nothing. She told me my career was shot to hell, and now she wants a T-shirt? She wants a T-shirt!
But JJ, again, was a great showman. Before he used to play Can't Stand Still, he would tell the T-shirt story and about when he was in school. And this goddamn teacher threw me out, and now she wants a fucking T-shirt?
She wants a T-shirt! She's out of her goddamn mind!
She can go to hell before she gets a T-shirt. It's gonna have to be snowing in August before she gets a goddamn T-shirt.
I'll tell you what I'm gonna do though. I think I'm gonna go to her house one day, real early in the morning. I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our truck and we're gonna drive right up onto her house because she lives in Queens. And we're gonna take all the equipment out of the truck and we're gonna line it up right underneath the window. And now I'm gonna yell up at her. I'm gonna tell her to stick her head out the window. And when she does, I ain't gonna give her a T-shirt, but I think I'm gonna give her this.
I remember one night I had been at Hammerheads, and I noticed some flyers that were being passed out that indicated that a place called the Glen Island Casino, which is somewhere up near Riot Beach somewhere, right on Long Island Sound there. And one of the very first shows they had booked was Twisted Sister and Whiplash. It took a while to get up there from the middle of Long Island, but I got there just in time. They were just starting, and that night they opened with Sweet Jane was their first song, and they get to a point in the middle of the song where they step back for a minute. Now D is not on stage yet, so JJ was out there and he's talking to the audience, and he's like, we're playing here tonight, but the owners told us that we're not allowed to curse. So we're going to try our best, how difficult it is for us not to curse. But we're going to do our best. But just because we can't curse is no reason why you can't. And so he had the audience turn around towards the windows, looking out toward Long Island Sound. And he said, everybody, at the count of 3, I want to hear everyone yell at the top of their lungs, fuck you! All right, so everybody, at the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, it's a big fuck you! And he has the audience do this about 3 or 4 times. And then they go back into the song and they build to a big climactic crescendo and come to an end. And with that, you can hear Charlie Barreca's voice coming through the PA. Look, JJ, they say we have to shut it down. That's it, we're off. And that was it. That was their first and last song of the night. Basically, the whole show was over in 15 minutes flat, one song, boom. Luckily, it was the long version of Sweet Jane.
We'd like you to realize, man, that this is like a whole gold mine for us coming down here. We would like to somehow make sure that you people come and see us other times, because I'm telling you, this is the kind of thing we're talking about, man. So we want to see you people around as much as we possibly can. That's why we tell you to get those hotline cards, call us up. Even if you can't make it down, call up the number. We tell you dirty jokes over the air, and you can tell your friends where we're going to be to make it down, because we want to see you people down so much more. I tell you, we love playing. And we did an outdoor concert last year. 23,000 people showed up in this little amusement park. This year, 23,000? Yeah, 23,000. I'm sorry I missed that. Yeah, well, you missed it. That's because you were so fucked up you didn't know where the fuck you were. But this year I will know where I am. All right, but this year we're trying to get Aqueduct Raceway to let us do a concert in fucking Aqueduct. But they told us they're afraid the horses are going to rape each other in the the stalls. I don't know what they're gonna do. But
No, tell them the reason. Because when the Good Rats played Belmont Lake, some people in the audience fucked a couple of the mares. I don't know, there's no accounting for some people's taste. I mean, the chick had a real horse face, but that is why, fucking with the horses, that's why they won't have us at Aqueduct.
Four and a half in White Plains was just a sick little bar, and stupid shit happened. Some girls came up on stage, took all their clothes off. I mean, complete stripped down. Some guy got drunk and stood up and pissed all over tables in the back ones. It was a small enough bar that crazy stuff happened. It was tiny with a stage that was very high up, so the amplifiers were about 6 feet up, ear level. Blastingly loud. And I remember one night some guy yelling, "Man, you guys aren't loud enough, you dudes aren't loud enough." And I went, "Really, asshole, come up here." And I took his head and I said, "It's not loud enough," and I put his head to the Marshall cabinet. I'm holding his head right to the Marshall cabinet. Right, I'm going, "Not loud enough?" He goes, "Turn it up." So I tell my roadie, "Turn it up." We're holding his head in the Marshall box. So I said, "You happy?" He goes, "No." I said, "Tape the fucker to the amp." So the crew taped the guy to the Marshall stack, like his arms out like Jesus. Now he's, for the entire set, this guy is taped to the Marshall stack, and in between songs, I'm going, "Hey, man, how you doing?" He's like giving me the thumbs up, like, this is the greatest.
I would not have wanted to be him, because the next day, every time after we saw them, our ears are ringing. I can't even imagine what this guy was feeling the next day.
all of you are joining up in the bleachers here. Is this a baseball game? Or are you fucking motherfuckers in the bleachers want to come down the dance floor for a couple of seconds and get down with the party? Turn the lights on, Elbow. There we are. Oh, I see a lot of a party. Look at the Twisted fucking Sister t-shirts up there. They're cooking. They're cooking, with rare exceptions.
D or J would pick out somebody standing on the fringes who was just observing and obviously thought they were too cool to be thrusting their fists in the air or screaming, and focus every movable light at our disposal directly on this person, single him out by name, foul him if he tried to move, and insist that that this particular person get into it, if you will. The usual ending was either the person would leave, or it would end up with D jumping off the stage and attacking the guy, and a fist fight would ensue. D went off a lot of stages in the early days. His technique, as I said, was a swan dive, but he's a large guy, and he weighs. He's a large guy, and he's landing on the front part of the crowd, which in a lot of cases are girls, or the front row, the regular girls that came to see us all the time, or his feet are catching them in the head. They're really unhappy with it. And as we get more and more popular, the front of the house is becoming more and more packed with people who really are into us and know the drill and are coming to a lot of shows. So after you've had D land on your head 2 or 3 times, you're starting to think, you know what, this is something I can live without. And this one famous day, somebody in the middle of the house, I think it was the Speaks, starts heckling D, might have thrown a bottle, and D takes 2 steps back, and the audience, having figured out the timing on it, as D leaves the stage, the front of the audience just sort of parts like the Red Sea, and D does this magnificent swan dive directly onto, and then from my standpoint, through the crowd, landing with a thud on his chest on the floor, okay? Well, along with the broken bottles and the spilled alcohol. It was terrifying and hysterical at the same time. And of course, that was, as you can imagine, the last night he ever left the stage.
We're just gonna have a good time tonight and get fucked up and party like we always do, because we ain't gonna do nothing different than we do every weekend. That is get high! You know what I'm talking about? How many people are high right now? Anybody? How many people are straight right now? That's right.
The irony of it is, both of us are not drinking and not doing drugs, and we're talking to people who are drinking and doing drugs, and we're selling ourselves like we're partying, and we're not.
So you're dressing like that and acting like that, and you're straight? Are you fucked up? You know, like, you had to have an excuse. So I was trying to encourage people to enjoy themselves and feel and be free. And in suburbia, that meant being high.
Now, a lot of people here are brain damaged, I realize. I see a few. I can't write. I lost that ability months ago, you know what I'm saying? It's from rolling too many joints. My fingers are all fucked up, you know? It's called, what do you call that again? It's called
Muscular dystrophy.
Oh, muscular.
That's when you roll so many joints, your thumbs get cramps. How many people ever get that fucking thing?
Oh, I got it.
You know that muscular dystrophy, it's a terrible disease. The only way you can recuperate is by taking 4 grams of coke a day for 3 years straight.
In one of the raps, I would take a Heineken, and I would, dead of summer, and I said, give me a Green Monster. And they would bring it out, and it was, you could see the frost on the bottle, and they'd bring it out, and the first thing I'd do is I would just like roll it on my neck and my face, just feel the coldness of the bottle. And I'd be relating this to the audience. And then I would take that first sip, and I didn't drink at all. You could see people running for the bars, running. But we were working in the bars. There was a direct correlation between our ability to sell alcohol to the crowd and to the kind of pay we would get.
The illusion, the concept that we're doing coke, drinking, getting fucked up, and fucking women and all this stuff was complete and utter bullshit. I mean, it was bullshit from top to bottom. But I never made an attempt to sell it like it was real. Like, if you're dumb enough to think I'm really that fucked up, then good for you, because how could I possibly do this and be that fucked up? You can't work as hard as we worked and be that fucked up.
Here we scum crawling down the street, get the funniest looks from all the narcos we meet. Hey, we're the junkies, and people say we're junkie around, but we're too busy shooting to put anybody down.
Yeah, I mean, guilty as charged. That was phony bullshit. But I was trying to sell booze.
President Jimmy Carter has asked Twisted Sister to be the official band of the Summer Olympics. There's only one problem. We ain't fucking going to Russia. That's because the fucking Russians suck gorilla dick, you know? Besides that...
No, they suck bear dick.
Oh, I'm sorry, they suck black dick. But the point is that he asked us, he said, well, Twisted, if there's going to be no Olympics over there in Russia, where the fuck are you going to have the Olympics? We said, we want to hold it at the Meadowlands, Giant Stadium. He says, well, you're only going to have one event. What is it? So we thought about it, and what we're going to do is, we're going to sponsor the Twisted Sister 5,000-meter Coke run, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let me explain to you what the 5,000-meter Coke run is, just so you understand that if you join the SMF...
Oh, I see you have some interest now.
What you do is this, okay? We're gonna drop the largest mirror you ever saw on your life on the fucking field of fucking the Giant Stadium. This fucking mirror is about 9,000 acres square. Then, we're gonna have the helicopters lower an 18-ton rock of Peruvian flake cocaine.
Beautiful.
You dig what I'm talking about, right?
It's like the Prudential Rock.
Now, this fucking rock is giant. Now, how the fuck you cut a rock like this? The biggest razor blade that chick ever built.
Paul Bunyan's razor blade.
It's gonna be lowered down, and we're gonna chop up 1,000 lines of fucking coke, 5,000 meters long and 4 inches thick. Now, here's
4 inches thick.
If you're a member of the SMF Club, you get an official number, you get a skateboard, and a 9-foot silver tube. And the object of the run is not who can make it first, but who can make it alive. Now, how many people would like to be involved in the Twisted Sister Coke Run?
A lifeline was thrown to us. The Tube wanted us to perform on the show. They had seen us at the Reading Festival and were intrigued. And the Tube was a unique show. You performed live, but it went out live. And we borrowed money from everybody we knew.
And we go to family and friends and borrow what we can. Still nowhere near enough. And so JJ and I go to, I believe it was 3 clubs that we had very good relationships with. Not the kind of people you normally would think to go to for cash loans unless your knees were on the line. But,
you know, borrowing money from Larry Tortorisi was kind of funny because Larry had just opened up a club in New York and he asked me if I wanted to come to the opening, and I just needed to pick up the money. I wasn't into going to the opening. I just wanted to go pick up the cash. And his brother, Tony, didn't want me in the main room because it was like big hitters night. The Rangers were there, a lot of press, and I was just T-shirts and jeans. And Tony says to me, whatever my brother says, don't come out to the main room. And I'm like, I don't want to get into an argument. I'll be in the back. Don't worry. He goes, so no matter what, you stay in the back room. I went, okay, yeah, I will. So I come in the back to get paid, and Larry says, hey, JJ, how you doing? Come out the front. And Tony's standing behind Larry. Goes, no, you don't. I'm like, well, Larry, I don't think I should. He goes, well, JJ, it's disrespectful. I want you. Tony's behind him going, no. It's like the Abbott and Costello routine. Have a small piece of cake. No, go ahead, have a small. All right, I'll have one. I told you not to order that. You know, it was really kind of funny. Larry was trying to be really open, and Tony just didn't want me in that room, and I found myself being kind of torn between the two. Needless to say, I was given the money in a brown paper bag, and that, with everybody else's money, was the money we used.
We're standing outside what used to be a club called Circus Circus, which existed on the upper floor of this building. It held between 600 and 800 people if you literally packed them like sardines. It was a nightmare to produce in. When Twisted would come in with all our stuff, it was the proverbial 5-pound bag. You could not move. The band hated playing here, never wanted to play here. And because it's the same market as the Soap Factory or the Hole in the Wall, which are these big, beautiful stages. And this was a little postage stamp size stage in a tiny room, no ventilation, hotter than Hades. But in many ways, it was the best place to see the band because if you managed to get in, you were on top of the band. And in many ways, it gave the best experience. It was like being front row center of the Garden because you felt like you were on the stage, in the show. Insanely loud, unbelievably eyebrow-singeingly bright. Everything about it was over the top. So in that respect, it really was vintage Twisted, but just a freaking nightmare to produce. And I would take a lot of abuse for about a week after we had to play one of these. I cannot believe. I really cannot believe we played this dump, and more than once, I might add. My favorite recollection of the place, though, is. My mother always wondered what I was wasting my life on, and she lived not too far from here. And one night I decided, what the heck, I'll invite her down. My mother's about yay tall, and she showed up in her mink. It's 800 degrees in the building. She shows up in her little sports car in her mink, and I had, hangers on, taking the car and valet parking it and ushering her in. And setting her up next to Charlie on the soundboard, which is the only place where she wouldn't be one of the sardines. And a bunch of groupies would run Jack Daniels to her all night. And she sat there bopping up and down, enjoying it. And left after the first set and couldn't hear anything for about a week.
Twisted saw itself from day one as an arena rock act. I was going someplace. And my big stumbling block was these shithole clubs. I fucking hated them. They were necessary evil. They were hot. They were cramped. The stages were small. They didn't allow me to do what I needed to do. They didn't treat me like a star. Point being, I would really take a lot out on these clubs. And I would verbally abuse the clubs. If there was something wrong and something disgusting, I would let everybody know how much I hated these clubs. And one of the things I hated more than anything else was a low ceiling. And I would use my mic stand as a weapon and smash the ceilings and just take apart the ceilings at the end of songs. I like nothing better than to literally leave my mic stand embedded in the ceiling of a club. To me, it was the ultimate fuck you. And the crowd loved it too. Some clubs would try to stop me from doing it by putting very thick plywood over the stages, and which I would walk or reach or climb to a place that had not been protected just so I could put my mic stand to the ceiling. Again, the middle finger, fuck you. I hate you. I hate you. I hate the club. I hate having to be here. I hate that you are in my way from getting to my final goal. The Piece de Resistance was a club called Mothers in Wayne, New Jersey. And Mothers had an exceptionally low stage with an exceptionally low ceiling, and they would never hire Twisted Sister. They refused because I don't know why. Maybe it was because we were so abusive. But whatever the reason was, they finally caved. But the understanding was, if Dee breaks the ceiling, you have to pay for it. Do not break the ceiling. And I didn't give a shit. I said, I'll pay for it. Who cares? That's not the point. So I remember we finished Rock and Roll Saviors. We're playing in Mothers, the club that would not have Twisted Sister. We insisted having Twisted Sister with a low fucking ceiling. And the club owner was standing in the back, and he was watching like a hawk. And we finished Rock and Roll Saviors. I took my mic stand, and I stuck it in the ceiling, and it just, moo, and it just hung in there. And then I looked right at the club owner, and I reached the mic stand, and I, like a crowbar, I used it as leverage to bring down the whole fucking ceiling. And Joe Gerber whips out a pile of money, and he is counting. I see the guy with his hands out, and Joe is just laying dollars into the guy's hand because the guy is livid. But I said, fuck that, man. Fuck you. I think I paid for a lot of ceilings.
They want to say if I get crazy and do anything nuts, you know? And we're not nuts. We're pretty calm, you know? They want to say, they think like I want to take my mic stand and go like this. No, I won't do that. I won't do that because I'm not here for your entertainment. Sorry, I'm not going to make a spectacle of my...
Yeah, most of them were pretty bad. Speaks was nice, Hammerheads was nice. Some of the Jersey clubs had real dressing rooms, but, you know, one of the worst ones again was, I'm trying to think the place in New Jersey, Emmett's Inn. We shared the room with the furnace. The dressing room was shared with the furnace. Yes. No bathroom, no nothing. Before we going on stage, the place was packed. You couldn't get to the bathroom. So we would pee in cups and leave it along the walls inside the dressing room. You couldn't get to a bathroom.
If you didn't give us the dignity of a bathroom, I was not walking. The star does not walk into the audience to pee. Just pee in cups. Just leave piss cups. There would be piss cups everywhere. Hey, it was better than Good Rats. They used to punch a hole in the wall and pee in the wall. So at least I was they could remove the cups.
You were telling me something about the dunes before.
Oh, the dunes still dawn. I wish you wouldn't have brought that up. Okay. See how my face just drops?
All right, let's not talk about that.
No, that's okay. If God was going to give the world an enema, he would have started at that place, I'm telling you. I will never, ever work, own, or be in a nightclub that opens at 11 o'clock at night and closes at 8 o'clock in the morning. I mean, we had two bands. They each did 3 one-hour sets. As soon as one band came off, just the amount of time it took to switch, change the drum risers, and most of the times we try to talk the drummers if they could just put one set of drums up because they were so big. And they would play 6 hours, so we'd have music continuously 6 hours from 11 to 8. But people at 10 to 8 in the morning would order like 15 drinks. Last call. We stopped that right away. Last call, can I help you? Yeah, give me 20 screwdrivers. What are you, out of your mind? Closing in 10 minutes. You've been behind that stick since 10 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock in the morning now. You've been drunk 3 times. What, are you kidding me? So now we had a brand new club, the Final Exam, and it was built from the ground up. And the thing cost a lot of money. Dee used to, from the stage, tell his people who weren't the nicest looking people, clientele we've ever had, to spit in a corner, pee in the corner, throw up if they feel like it. And he used to call my club, instead of the Final Exam, he would call it the Vaginal Exam, which I really didn't like. Either did my staff. You know, I mean, come on. But it got to be so bad that I would threaten him that when you get off that stage, I'm going to try to break every bone in your body.
That was a little bonus we threw in when you paid us more money than anybody else, is you got your club insulted and the name changed to something scatologically grotesque. Circus became Jerkus. and so on, unless we just refer to it as a shithole. As Long Island slowly started to fade as a market for us, Speaks became a disco. We realized we needed to expand. We had never had much of a presence at the Jersey Shore. A couple strip clubs, that was about it. But Kevin set up a venue shopping trip for me. I did an advance trip on an off day. Stopped at about 13 or 14 of the dumpiest little rooms you've ever seen. Nothing. And on the way back, the last place I stopped at was like a vision. This humongous catering hall called the Fountain Casino that they were converting into a rock club. I come up Route 35, I come around the bend, I come into the parking lot, and I am met with an apparition. The Fountain Casino. The biggest, most ridiculous looking catering hall I have ever seen in my life. It's perfect, and they got money. Look at the place. They got money. We can do this. The only question now is, how do we do this? It's a Thursday night. It's preseason. It's like the end of April. We're on the Jersey Shore. That usually spells disaster. Off night Jersey Shore in April. 3,500 people show up. An amazing night. Fill the room. Beyond the record, which only lasts until the following month when we do the second one and do 4,000 people. But we had found a perfect home for the band in New Jersey.
It was a catering hall that had walls that opened to make it like bigger and bigger and bigger. So you could hold 1,000 people, and then you'd open up a wall and it would go like 2,000. Then you open up the wall and it would go like 4,000. And there were nights where Twisted Sister would play and every wall was open and you could not move.
It was the big daddy of all. And only the biggest bands headlined Monday nights at the Fountain.
The Hole in the Wall was in Rochelle Park, New Jersey, and the original name of the club was Club Rochelle. That was the original name. And it's situated right on Route 17, New Jersey, which is one of the busiest and one of the most dangerous highways in America. And one day, a tractor trailer veered off the road and plowed right into the side of the building and put a giant hole in the wall. And they fixed the place up. And they decided, whether it was a good luck charm or not, but when they reopened it, they opened it up as the Hole in the Wall. And on the side of the building, they had a giant mural of a hole, of the broken concrete, and there was a picture you could actually look inside, and they had a picture of, people standing watching a band up on stage playing. The security for the Hole in the Wall were all bikers. So there was all these huge biker dudes, and So whereas, when I would tell people I'm going to the Hole in the Wall, and they would say, oh, that place, that's like a punch palace, I'm like, there's no fights there. Who the hell's going to get in a fight when they know one of these big biker dudes are going to come and clean their clock if they get into any trouble? So I almost never saw any problems there because, you knew not to mess around there. I was just, you were taking your life in your hands because if you didn't get hurt in the fight, they'd take care of you outside. And they also had female bartenders in short shorts and tank tops, and so that always added to the atmosphere. And so even if you just wanted to hang out at the bar and talk to the bartenders, because a lot of times when Twisted was playing, that the bartenders were 90% of the females that were in the building. I used to call it my home away from home. It was the only club I felt comfortable enough to go there by myself. Even if I wanted to see a band and none of my friends were around or they didn't want to go, I'd go there by myself. I'd sit at the bar talking to one of the girls and just watch the band. If you met a girl at a Twisted show, fine. That was great. That's a bonus. But otherwise, you knew you were going to see a good band. You were going to have a good time. And you were hanging out with your friends, you're drinking, and you're seeing Twisted Sister. Back then, you didn't need much more than that.
They helped us a lot in, bringing rock to Brooklyn. What happened was we were rock, like I said, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And we used to say, once disco went down to a certain number, I think the number was 400, we turned it rock. We just wanted to turn it rock, but we were still doing like 1,500 people in disco. So eventually, Saturday went down and we were gonna do rock. So we had this idea that Twisted was gonna play on that Thursday, and D was going to rip down the disco sign and burn it on stage. And we were sold out inside, and we had 1,500 people outside that couldn't even get in the club, waiting for D to come out and rip down the awning. It was mayhem. It was mayhem outside. We had to put bouncers around the whole front of the club. So D ripped the awning down. He took it inside. We put a barrel on stage, and he says, I can't curse, right?
No, you can't.
Oh, he says, disco will never be in this fucking room again. And he lit the barrel on fire, and it went up. But the funny part is, we kept that awning like that for 2 months because people were just coming to see the awning, coming to the club, and that's the awning that D ripped down and made the club rock, and that was it. And that's how the club officially went rock.
Max's and Renaissance in Awantor on Long Island were two clubs that were around the corner from each other, owned by the same people. And Twisted played there 75 through early 78, and there was yellow footprints on the ground that they put down so you can follow the footprints and go from one club to another, I suppose, if you're too drunk to actually figure out how to get there by yourself. They used to schedule the band breaks opposite each other, so when one band was going on a break, you could follow the footsteps and go to the other club and see the band playing. You were never without entertainment when you went to those two clubs. There was always something to walk to and see. That's if you weren't too drunk to be able to make the walk. A lot of people fell down on the way.
D had an unbelievable amount of energy. He was nasty, though. He was nasty. The stuff would come out of his mouth. It was like, I don't know, a backed up septic tank or something. And of course, he would get his chance to rank me on the stage. You know, Bobby Jordan thinks you all suck, and Bobby, you know, he wouldn't hesitate to kick my name out in a heartbeat. He would start, and then we would just banter back and forth. He had a microphone and I didn't, so I'd be yelling up to him, and it would be like, you know, maybe 700-800 people in the room, and me and him would be going back and forth, and it's a no-win situation. And then JJ would gang up on you, you know what I mean? He had to cover his boy. JJ would gang up on you, and the both of them would be doing it, you know? And then I would have to threaten some kind of brutality.
They always ranked on probably every club owner from the stage. You know, you took it, you know.
But D made sure that at least another couple of thousand people knew who I was, which I needed, you know what I mean?
The only thing we just kept saying is don't say our last name on the stage, because what happened is they probably don't know this, you know, my mother was actually listed, and once he said our name on stage, my mother be getting these phone calls. So that's the only thing we told him. Just say George and Mike. They always ranked on it. They ranked on everybody.
Tip the bartenders. They need all the help they can get, especially after working for El Mogul. Cheapest man alive. Yeah. How many people know the owner of this club? Cheap son of a bitch.
Well, Twisted Sister never played Uncle Bob's Rock and Funhouse. At the height of the club scene on Long Island, there was more than just the big clubs that all the big bands played. You had smaller clubs and smaller bands. And like I said, you could go 7 nights a week and see a great band, anything from Twisted Sister playing for 4,000 people to much smaller bands like Samantha playing for 100 people in a local bar. Every Monday night at a bar in Mineola called Uncle Bob's Rock and Funhouse, a friend of mine's band, Samantha, would play there. And every band that was off, all the big bands that were off, would go there on a Monday night. So of course that would attract everybody else, all the fans and women would go there. And the place would literally have hundreds of people. It only held about 200 people, maybe 150 people. And there'll be 400 or 500 people outside on the street outside. So every Monday night it was a huge scene to go hang out there. And of course, Samantha would come in and play one set, and all the other musicians would jam the rest of the night. And the owner didn't care because he was making oodles of money, but it was upsetting the neighborhood, an incredible amount upsetting the neighborhood. So after this went on for 2 summers, especially in the summertime, my friend's band played there on a Monday night, and we went and had breakfast and went home. By the time I got home, he called me and said, we got to go back. Uncle Bob's burned down. So we went back. Sun was up. It's already 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning. I'm sorry, on a Tuesday morning. We drove over there, and of course the firemen are just pulling in the hoses now. And there was one wall left, one side wall left. It was the place was white brick, and it said shish kebabs on it. We took pictures of that. It's what a shame it burned down. But the rumor is that the neighborhood burned it down. They couldn't stand it anymore. I don't blame them. It was way too many people there.
We're in Palisades Park, New Jersey, where the soap factory was, but more importantly, essentially ground zero for where you wanted to be if you were a Twisted fan. In Palisades Park, virtually all the major highways in the area intersect. Not great for real estate values, but perfect if you're trying to get to a Twisted show. Never more than about 90 minutes, 2 hours tops from a gig. We're standing here in the parking lot of the world-famous soap factory, which was an actual soap factory back in the day, I'm told, I'm led to believe. At 5 o'clock, we pull in for sound check. We used to have to take evasive action because the line would already be from the tower part of that building all the way around down here and sometimes just turn in the corner. And this is, we're talking 3-4 hours before the club would open. It's classic Jersey bar. There's bars everywhere. Every direction you look, unlike New York where the licensing fee is based on a per bar basis and it can be very expensive, so they build these huge bars. Jersey is all island bars. If they have 2 extra feet of space where they can't put people, they'll put a bar there because they have a legal limit on the number of people they can put in. So they cram them in as much as possible, and then every other space where they don't need it for people, there's a bar and a bartender. And if you're wobbly and you've had 1 too many, you're going to have 6 too many because every time you fall, you're going to land on a bar and they're going to give you another one. So that's the basic thing in the soap factory. Oh, and I missed one more thing. Hi there.
I believe we were the first band to play the soap factory, and we walked in with all this ungodly sound equipment, and the place was nothing but mirrors. And the sound man and me and the rest of the guys, we just looked at each other and said, people are going to die in here. Because once that sound started hitting those mirrors, it had nowhere to go because it couldn't be soaked up. But they didn't care.
Out of all the clubs that they played, I think my favorite place was probably Speaks. It was a huge nightclub. It used to be called Action House, and it's got quite a robust history of rock and roll. And it had such an odd layout. I mean, it was just one big room where you could see the band from anywhere in the room. And it had these weird giant stairs in the middle of it that just kind of went up and then went back down. They went to nowhere. They were like the stairway to heaven.
The summer of 78 with Speaks represented this kind of marquee placement of the top tier bands in the bar circuit. And each one had a following that was unique, I think, to the band, which was interesting. Monday was Stanton Anderson Band, and so that was the country rock cover band, the Lynyrd Skynyrd, Allman Brothers stuff. Zebra was Tuesday night, and that was a heavy Led Zeppelin thing going on there with them. And then there was Wednesday night, Rat Race Choir did The Who and Jethro Tull. And then there was us. But we were not as easily categorized as these other bands. This was the golden era of massive bands that had super marquee names and could draw.
This Uncle Ralph used to work for Speaks, and he was always like, he had a message. Because one time I had to call because I was running late, so I couldn't get through to the club. So I call up and I hear him say like, okay, Wednesday night we got Zebra. No, wait a minute. We got Southern Cross. Thursday night we got Twisted Sister. Twisted Sister's gonna be here this Friday and Saturday too. So you stay, you get a hotel room, you stay the whole weekend. Sunday night we're gonna make a pie out of your firstborn, all right? If you don't show up. So you come to the club, you come Wednesday, Thursday you come see Twisted, you stay the whole weekend. Okay, beep.
This is the epitome of our club scene. This was it. This was the grandiose place. This was home for Twisted Sister for quite some time. This empty, garbage-strewn, chain-linked, grass-ridden field, little area is where Speaks was the baddest.
There was a bar in Queens called the Community Garden, and they switched their name to Beggar's Opera, and we really wanted to play this room. And the club owner was a retired fireman. I remember talking to him, or my agent talking to him about the band playing there, and he kept saying, I don't want that band there, I don't want their fans there, they wear sneakers and t-shirts, and I have a dress code. And my agent, Kevin Brenner, said, go see them, They pack a room. What the hell do you care if they wear sneakers? So the guy came to Speaks. You know, the Speaks is owned by Phil Basile, one of the most, colorful and legendary manager/club owners. Another very Sopranos-ish type of character. And we had little run-ins, but he was a businessman, and he always knew you pack Speaks, he doesn't really care.
Well, before we do a song that I know is on your mind, I would like to do 20 seconds of one of the most obnoxious commercials that I know of. It's a commercial for a nightclub in Nassau County, and it goes like this. Speaks, the greasiest. Speaks, the jivest. Speaks, the smelliest bathrooms. The most obnoxious bouncers.
The biggest potholes in the parking lot. The most ice in your drinks. The most rat meat in the hamburgers. That was our joke. And everyone's laughing. The club owner looks at Phil Basile and goes, how can you put up with that? And Phil goes, hey, there's 2,000 people in my room. You think I give a shit what the hell they're saying on stage? Yeah, but they're fans are singers. Are you fucking for real? Like, just looked at the guy like the guy was an idiot. So the guy humbly agreed to allow us to finally play his scuzzy bar. So it's in Queens Village. And who are the bouncers? Some guys who work in their motorcycle gang / gym staff. These guys were badasses. So we played Beggar's Opera, and we were being heckled. Some guy constantly was screaming, I don't know, you fag, you this, you that, whatever. And then we see a bunch of these bouncers surround the guy and like piranha on ham. Like we just see this like this kind of like movement in the crowd. And then they kind of like move off to the side and disappear, and the guy disappears. And we go to our dressing room at the end of the set, and in our dressing room is this guy who apparently was heckling us. And they had beat this guy to death. He had rags stuffed in his mouth. He was bleeding from his ears, from his nose. His teeth were cracked. What the fuck is this? And the bouncer's going, it's a gift. It's our gift to you to show you how much we wanted you to come play this bar. We kicked his ass. Like, wow, man, thanks. Thanks a lot. I'm glad we passed the audition. Oh, my God.
I don't think the band as a whole liked playing there. I really liked every club. It was always an experience. There was always something new going on, and always something exciting going on. Even if it was watching people getting their heads beat in.
What we're trying to do is take these little places and turn them into Madison Square Garden, because that's the way the band wanted to feel, and that's the kind of performance they were going to give, and everything had to be consistent with that. So towards that end, we developed staging pieces, and for a long time, it involved the infamous fences, which were actual steel, galvanized steel fences, barbed wire on top, and we spray painted them glowing cerise, which was hot pink, and we would drop black linen tablecloths behind them to make the pink pop. They lit beautifully. If you hit them with just a little bit of blue light on the stage, they actually glow a little bit. And it became a signature look that carried over, along with the new logo. The hot pink and black to this day is still Twisted Colors. And we were always emphasizing with the crew that every day you go in and you get every last piece of backline up there. It doesn't matter how low the ceiling is, the fences must go in. And it was very important because it kept up the presentation illusion that we were trying to project. And it was harder and harder as we got further and further away from New York, because we were getting into smaller rooms to start up. The farthest southwest we ever got was Trenton, New Jersey. And we showed up for sound check that day. And I went over to the production manager, Frank Rubino, as soon as I got there. And I said, Frankie, where's the other piece of fence? Did Elmo lose it? He said, no, but you can't, because and he shows me a little piece of wood up in the roof. He says, it's in the way. I said, well, make it get out of the way. He said, what do you mean make it get out of the way? It's a header. You can't. Frank, give me a ladder and a saw. Gives me a ladder. I climb up to the top of the ladder. I take the saw. I notch out this piece of wood. We raised the other piece of fence. We put them up. It looks fantastic. We do the sound check. Club owner comes at the end of sound check and turns ashen white. He says, "What the fuck did you do to my club?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "You cut the header." I said, "You mean that piece of wood up there? It was in the way of the fences." He says, that piece of wood is holding up the fucking ceiling, you idiot!" So that's how I learned what a header was, the hard way. P.S. We left that piece of fence in the club until they could get an engineering firm in to figure out how to reconstruct it without the roof caving in on them. But live and learn.
Moore's is a legendary rock club that really stood the test of time against all the other clubs we played in, because they eventually hired national acts. But I remember thinking, L'Amour, boy, that sounds like a disco or a strip joint, right? And we get in there, and it was, and the Parentes were like, "Yeah, you know, like it's a disco. We're gonna try rock one night a week and see what happens."
We heard about it. It was just a buzz in Brooklyn that this Twisted Sister, we didn't know who Twisted Sister was. We didn't know anything about rock. We were doing disco on the weekends. We were looking for something to do during the week because we seen disco, you know, was going down, and we said we need something else to do here. And that's what we did. We wanted to see them, and then we were trying to find out how we could book them ourselves. It did great, but they came in and they had this attitude, this is, we run the place, and, you sit in the corner and we take over the club, and we didn't operate like that. So we kind of butt heads at the very beginning. We said, listen, we know what we're doing. You know what you're doing. Let us do what we do. And, they seen right away that we were good club owners. And besides the fact that he ripped out almost every plant in the place, because it was in his way, everything was good. So my brother was saying, "Oh, look, they ripped out all the plants." I says, "Well, let's go see what the registers did before we go crazy." And it was a great night.
I believe it was Beggar's Opera in Queens was the first place I saw Twisted Sister. And immediately it was such a complete difference from what went on in Manhattan, where you would have people sitting at tables with waitresses and everything was very civilized and polite, and the song would end and people would clap. And you went to Twisted, and as soon as you opened the door to go into the club, it was like you were in a tornado.
I had already fallen in love with the likes of the New York Dolls and David Bowie and Alice Cooper and stuff like that. So the glam and makeup and the crazy outfits and everything that Twisted was doing was right up my alley for the entertainment value.
Loud, fast, rude. And they played, they played their own songs, plus they played songs that I liked.
The first couple of times me and my friends saw them, we didn't even we were asking each other, "Do you like the music?" And we're like, "I don't know about the music, but the show is funny as hell."
Twisted was on the stage. I immediately saw JJ and just went right up to the front of the stage, and I didn't move from there until about 1984 or 5, I guess.
I couldn't tell you how many times I saw the band.
I
We
would
never
say
counted.
I would say at least 10.
10? I'd say way more than 10.
I said at least 10.
Like,
this is the way it's going to go.
I was going to say that. In years. Think
I guess
about
you're
it, how
right.
many-
All right, so I guess you're right. It was more than 10. Yes,
like,
you're right.
I was going to say 50.
I think I probably saw them at least 40 or 50 times.
In my life, I've probably seen Twisted, I want to say conservative, 50 times. In the clubs.
Figure over like a 4 or 5 year period, probably saw them about 100 times.
I think between the years of 1979 to 1982, probably had to see him at least 100 times, 120 times.
Probably hundreds of times, at least.
My best educated guess would be hundreds of times.
Over 200, probably closer to 300.
Thousands? Would that make it thousands? I don't know. Hundreds? Yeah, hundreds of times, I guess. So I'm not really sure, but I saw them a lot.
So you need the service of a man. I can do what any grown man can. Oh, you think I look like a little boy? Don't be fooled, I've got a deadly toy. I'm a lady boy. I'm a joy. I'm a wayward child. slowly gone. Now check this out, honey.
The front row girls, not to be confused with groupies. There was no sex going on with the front row girls. It wasn't about that. They were treated very respectfully. They were our core customers. They were our regulars. You count on them no matter what. We could catch the worst weather in the world. A club owner could screw up the advertisements and nobody could know we were there. They would find us every night.
We'd get there a few hours early before the club opened, and then we would just wait and be the first ones in, and would want to stand in the front row.
We never went there thinking we were going to meet them or we were going to hang out with them. We just went for the show. We went because we enjoyed them. She had a crush on JJ, but we
doubt the crush she had on D, but we'll let that slide.
She was crazy about it.
They came every day and had their spot. They would stand in the same spot every single night. You had JJ fans, Eddie fans, Mark fans, D fans.
Everybody had their favorite guy in the band that they liked and didn't like, so it was kind of like, well, I like him, I don't like him, I don't like him.
We would stand center to JJ. So that was our spot.
My place was between, in front of JJ and Mark. Because when I first started to go, JJ and Mark played on the same side of the stage.
One of the great unintended comedies of all time was the night, for acoustic reasons, we swapped Eddie and Mark, the two outside guys on the line.
I looked up at JJ and I was like, what's going on? And Mark was over there and he was sort of laughing, and I was like...
It was a great solution acoustically, but it wreaked havoc with the front row girls. I mean, the lights come up and, wait, what are you doing? And then the two ends sort of swarming through each other, like in some form of clusterfuck or another, fighting through a huge crowd and ending up, before the first song was over, perfectly readjusted.
I ended up just staying in front of JJ, and that was my choice, and I don't think Mark has ever let me live that down to this day.
Won't you come up and see me sometime?
My name is Danny. I'm currently Twisted Sister's tour manager, booking agent, and babysitter most of the times. I remember being 15 years old and coming home one day and saying to my parents, can I go see this band, Twisted Sister? And they're playing at a place called Beggar's Opera in Queens. And at the time I was residing in Floral Park, so it wasn't that far to get to. And I recall my dad saying, there's no way you're going to go see this band play at Beggar's Opera because it's a bar. And I remember getting into an argument with my father going, well, if there's a band playing there and there's a stage and it's a club, it's not a bar. And he goes, there's a liquor there, it's a bar, you're not going. So later that night, probably 4 or 5 hours after the argument, they go to sleep and out the window I go. And I get on a bus down on Hillside Avenue straight to Beggar's Opera. And I remember getting off and saying, okay, well, I got down here and I'm going to go see this band tonight, but now how do I get in? Because I wasn't of age. And I go down the side of the alleyway, and there's an open door. And just as I walk in, I get caught by the owner. But at the same time, Dee Snider walks out of the dressing room and says, if you throw this kid out, we don't play tonight. And I was like, you heard the singer. He said that if you throw me out tonight, they're not playing. So to make a long story short, they actually let me stay, and I was very surprised. So I stood on the side of the stage, and I watched this band change my life.
The fact of the matter is that everybody over the age of 18 deserves to be in the sick motherfucking Friends of Twisted Sister, you know? What makes it so...
This is your natural right as an American.
That's right, man. You were born to live free, work for money, and to carry an SMF card. Don't leave home without it.
And anything that they said, I took, to heart and put it in stone, and they started issuing these things. It was a card. And at my age, you didn't have a credit card or anything like that, so that thing was just like having power in your pocket. It said that you can do anything once you have this card. So I remember getting my SMF card and making me feel invincible to have it. And I was on a subway train one day, and back then, I don't know if they still do it now, but just before the door closes, you'll hear the like a bong, you know, a bing bong sound or whatever, and the doors will close. And I see some lady just about trying to get on the train, and I held the door open, and I'm holding it, but she's taking forever to get on. So the point where she gets on, a transit authority cop comes, let's go, and takes me off the train. And he goes, you're obstructing, you're getting a ticket. And I go, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I pull out my card. I believed probably at that time it was going to get me off the hook. And I'm like, the band tells me that this would... No, it didn't fly. It didn't work. So obviously he gives me the ticket. And back then, when you got a ticket, you had to take your ticket and appear with it in court and give it to the judge. So before then, I get this ticket and I go to see Twisted Sister later on that week. And the guys in the band wind up hearing about the story, and they're laughing, and they're like, you're an idiot, right? So Deke calls me out on stage. I'm standing in the audience when he's doing his sick motherfucker card rap, and he goes, and this kid here pulls out his card and gets a ticket. And he goes, where's that ticket? And I give it to D, and I figure he's just going to show the audience. But not D. D takes it, crumbles it up, starts eating it, chewing it out, spitting it, swallowing it.
Is that heavy? Is that too heavy? Am I being too mean?
And I'm going, you've got to be kidding. I need this ticket to go to court. So I go to court, and the judge goes, okay, where's your ticket? And I said, listen, I know you're not going to believe this, but the lead singer of Twisted Sister is now eating my ticket. I said, I don't have my ticket anymore. So it became a running joke, and I carry that card to this day.
When I came up with the idea for the official SMF Friends of Twisted Sister card carrying, members, there had to be some benefit to it. And we had to do something to keep the fans engaged. The idea for the end of summer SMF bashes came about.
We're putting together on August 25th, we're going to have an end of summer party exclusively for sick motherfucking friends only, and it's going to be absolutely free. And it's going to start 11 a.m. in the morning, and it's going to finish 4 a.m. the next morning.
SMF parties were legendary. I mean, there's two of them, and people still talk about them to this day. Snake Sabo from Skid Row, he was an attendee of the one in Fountain Casino, and I remember some guy wearing a chair as a hat, an easy chair as a hat, won the most sickest bastard award. We had a trophy. We gave out trophies.
It's going to be the sickest. Twisted Sister's going to be there. And we're going to get a lot of other rock and roll bands. We've been talking to the Beatles and Led Zeppelin. We're seeing what we can do. We're working on putting a reunion together with them, but I don't know. But we're definitely, Pink Floyd is going to be opening for us with only half of the wall because it's a small stage.
Oh, they started in the afternoon and went to the wee hours in the morning, yes. Even though the club's closed, the parking lot stayed partying until the sun came up.
People just got wasted. It was what you did.
People tailgating, they had barbecues going on. Nobody thought about insurance and problems and drunk people with propane tanks, and nobody thought about this stuff. It was just let it go.
And that's what SMF parties were designed to do. Give people a forum to get completely blotto.
Yeah, the third set was always interesting because most of the time Dee took the third set off, and he would let the other guys in the band shine a little.
It was like the first two sets were a show. They had a set list down. The third set was like, whoever's left is drunk, we're just going to wing it, and those are the fun sets.
A third set was basically a free-for-all jam. They played Lou Reed songs. They played Ted Nugent. They did Beatles. It was basically Eddie singing, sometimes JJ singing, and they basically just kind of wung it.
It was a loose set. It was very loose. It was like, the late night Sinatra set at, the Sands or something. JJ would tell some jokes, and they'd do the Chinese hustle and, follow the bouncing Quaalude. And, it was very fun and loose.
If you didn't stay for the third set, you pretty much had to have a good reason. Almost like missing Sunday dinner. If you weren't there for the third set, what's your problem? I mean, come on, where do you gotta go?
I think a lot of the fans just felt like part of a family and part of a team. and felt like it was, it was up to them as well. They had a responsibility to really help kind of promote the band and push the band, and there was an intense loyalty when it came to being a Twisted Sister fan.
Everybody wanted Twisted Sister to make it. I mean, Twisted had great music and their stage presence was such, but again, it was that there was just a magic between the band and the audience that you were on the same trip as them.
There was definitely a community of Twisted Sister fans, and you would see a lot of the same people there. And for your buddies to be into Twisted Sister, there was like a community.
You kind of found a place where you could belong. I mean, Twisted kept you in, and there was a crowd of people who just loved you for what you are. You didn't have to dress up. You didn't have to look pretty. You just had to go and have a good time.
And they always got you involved in the show, and it was, I mean, by the time they were done, it looked like we had just, walked out of a swimming pool. I mean, we were drenched, and normally, back then when you're going to bars and trying to meet women and everything, you're trying to look your coolest, and you never looked your coolest when you went to see Twisted Sister, because you were jumping up and down and yelling and doing whatever they told you to do.
It was one of those things that you always felt like no matter what you were into, it was okay. If you were into Metallica, it was good. You into Kiss, it was good. Whereas, like, if you were at a Metallica show and you said you were into Kiss, you were like, Kiss, what? If you were at a Kiss show and you said you were into Impaler, they'd be like, what are you, a freak? But D, always made everybody feel good. There wasn't really much of a separation of church and state when it came to metal. Everybody was invited. Unless, of course, you were into disco. Or, you wore a three-piece suit and jewelry and all that stuff back then. You were going to get sliced and diced and gutted like a deer because there's no way you're hanging out with us.
Sometime around May of '82, we get a phone call from Electric Lady Studios. They wanted to talk to us. So me and Mark Puma went to see the guy, and we said, what's up? He says, when you guys came here and recorded your stuff with Eddie Kramer? I said, yeah, well, the deal is if you get a record deal using our music, you have to pay us 4 times the studio rate. And I said, well, who made that deal? He goes, well, it was a deal we made with Eddie. So I said, well, we didn't get a record deal. He says, yes, you did. I said, no, we didn't. We just got a deal with Secret Records. We didn't even have a record out. He says, that's not true. It says if you have a record deal, you made a record. I said, what record? And he throws the single, Under the Blade single. And I go, well, that's a promotional thing. He goes, I bought that at Sam Goody's. That's a record. I bought it at a record store. It's a record deal. You owe me $24,000 or I'll break your legs. He threatened to break my legs. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I've been playing to, interesting characters for years. No one ever threatened me. And I walked downstairs and said to Mark Puma, this guy's just threatening to break my legs. Is that right? He did say he was going to break my legs, right? Like break my kneecaps. And he goes, yeah. I said, well, what are you going to do about it? Having never been threatened before, we called up one of the club owners that we kind of thought would possibly know somebody of a certain persuasion who could help us out. We called Larry Tortorice's office. I think a couple of phone calls were made. Someone, Mickey the Knife, Jimmy the Shoe, Frankie the Fork, Eddie the Fish. Someone did something, made a call to somebody who made a call to somebody, and the decision was made that if X amount of money could be paid, then the hit would be taken off. So we did the deal. Secret agreed to pay, I think, $10,000 and bought the Electric Lady tapes for $10,000, which became Rough Cuts.
In the bar days back then, Led Zeppelin was the key to working. If you could do Led Zeppelin, you could work.
When we started off in New Orleans, our concept wasn't to do a Zeppelin thing. We were doing a lot of different music. It's just that once we started playing, people just wanted to hear more Zeppelin.
If I heard a Led Zeppelin song, I knew how it was played before I even picked up the guitar. It was just a thing. So when something comes that easy and people go that nuts over it, it's a fool's order. Just go for it.
When I joined the band, I brought with me Led Zeppelin, which was something they could not do until I was in the band.
I called my agent. I said, the guy can sing Zepp really great. And he said, well, now, put together a song list. Let's see you guys can make some money.
I had been in a band that did quite a bit of Zeppelin, and we had a pretty killer medley that we had put together. And I showed it to the band, and they loved it. It was, it was really first album stuff. How Many More Times, Dazed and Confused, I think Communication Breakdown, Good Times, Bad Times, whatever. It was made up of some really classic Zeppelin, and it would bring the house down. bring the frickin' house down.
Dee was very good at doing Zeppelin. In fact, when he first joined the band, we did a lot of Zeppelin. I mean, he used to be like a Robert Plant clone, especially if you stood at the back of the club, he looked just like Robert Plant. It's when you came up close, you know, the Bette Midler effect started taking, you know, more like Bette Midler, Robert Plant. Bette Midler, Robert Plant.
Early on, in the same period, I started to have vocal problems. I had sang Zeppelin my whole life. And I was starting to lose some of my range and having difficulty singing some stuff. What I found out is that I had a significant throat infection that I had just been singing on for months. And I lost, for a while, I lost my Zeppelin voice. You know, I lost that higher voice, and my voice started becoming much more raspy and husky and more Alice Cooperian. So I had to start changing my style and changing my repertoire. So early on, the music that got me into the band in the first place, I could no longer do.
That was the basic Twisted approach. That's really what separated us from everybody else, is that when we went into a room, no matter how much of a dump it was, and some of these places were world-class dumps. I mean, you know, the other dumps would have been proud to be these dumps. We would roll in, and for that evening, it was Madison Square Garden. There was a huge PA, there was tons of lights, there was a big stage setup. Everything you might see in a big show, except in a very small environment. What we did, essentially from a booking standpoint, is the same way a national act would divide up the country into markets and territories, primary, secondary, and you have choices of venues in many of the markets. We did the same thing on a tiny level. But rather than every 100 miles or every major city be in a market, we just would go a few miles, plant a flag in whatever club we could find, and build the market up there, and then we were ready to move a little further out. Very often, the first time into a market, we were playing only to people that were from other areas and had seen us before, but were willing to travel. But once you're in there and you create the event, the next time the locals are going to show. The largest part of our audience, which we refer to as cream cheese, that they're just going to go where the girls are going to go. And they like Twisted and they're fans, but they're not there just to see the band. They're there for the whole big event mentality, which is what everything we did was about developing, was creating something where even if you didn't like the band, you wanted to be there because that's where the action was. And if that's where the action is, then that's where everybody's going to go, and it just keeps snowballing and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Of course, to keep the cash flowing, Jay was the t-shirt salesman. He would push the shirt and come up with innumerable clever, interesting ways to describe what was essentially a 50-50 t-shirt.
I want to tell you about the new t-shirt. Yes, we have one, and it's designed to look real good. It accentuates the nipples on the women, which I like a lot, with winter right around the old corner. And Christmas is coming, so why not buy a t-shirt? And while you're at it, why not buy your father a Twisted Sister visor so he'll be all ready for the golf course next June?
And that was the big thing. Like, how many Twisted t-shirts do you have? You know, you collected them. Every gig was a new t-shirt.
That's JJ, the marketing machine. He was always figuring out how to make some more money, sell some more t-shirts.
These shirts prevent car accidents, pregnancy, and lung cancer, okay? It's an incredible thing.
I would go to our t-shirt manufacturer, which was in Brooklyn, fill up my car full of boxes of t-shirts and come back and sell them. We would sell out right away.
Yeah, we pushed merchandise. We pushed t-shirts, and I've heard many of a touring band very confused, like Judas Priest, for example. When they would come to the tri-state area and perform, they'd be looking at a sea of Twisted Sister shirts.
In those days, I think our t-shirts we were selling them for $5 or $6 a pop. 50-50 American, won't shrink, great printing, 4-color printing. We went the other way, came out with a no-frills Twisted Sister shirt, which means you wash it once and it turns into a midriff, and you wash it twice and it turns into a choker, and sold them for $1.99. And nobody ever got the penny back, by the way. From what I understand, actually, those are the most valuable old Twisted shirts, if you can find one that hasn't been shredded by a washing machine, because they really were crap.
From the audience, it was tremendous. From the industry, it was people scratching their head that they were amazed that it had happened, but it didn't bring any record companies to the point that they were willing to take the shot and sign the band. It would be like, well, you know, that's New York, and there's plenty of bands that can make it in New York, but, you know, can't make it every place else, and we need a band that can make it anywhere. Whereas we knew, because it happened in the suburbs, the New York suburbs were like the Cleveland suburbs or the LA suburbs or the Phoenix suburbs. You know, this band was a suburban phenomenon, and their suburban fans came into New York, whereas when you had, let's say, the Teardrop Explodes playing at a place like the Ritz, that was the New York underground coming out to see the Teardrop Explodes, and the suburban kids wouldn't even know, you know, who they were. So in my experience, I felt that these guys could sell tickets anywhere, but the record companies were into a different, they didn't think they'd get it on the radio, they didn't know how to sell it if you don't get it on the radio. They no longer were really in the mode of working with a touring band. So the idea that an Iron Maiden could go out there and play to 500 people in every city, and then a year later play to 1,000, and a year later play to 2, was too long of a time frame for record companies at that point. They wanted the top 10 single, the million selling units. The attitude would almost be like to a band, look, we need you to have a platinum album more than you need you to have a platinum album. You know, everyone's looking at our quarterly numbers, and, you know, we're not here to career build. We're here to, you know, pop hits.
When people go to nightclubs, they usually want to hear the songs that they know. They don't want to hear, you know, a B-side of an obscure song. They want to hear a song they know, the song they hear on the radio. You know, if a Led Zeppelin song was big at the time, the band should be playing that Led Zeppelin song. So that's what it is. It's just like if you go into a small bar and you put it, you know, a quarter in the jukebox or whatever it costs these days. You don't play a song you don't know. You play a song that's a hit.
People who saw the band back in the day will say that when we did covers, we just didn't do a cover. We kind of twistified a song. We made it so unique. We sped it up. We hit it with the same adrenaline. So if you really listen to the cover material we did and you dovetail it with the originals, you really don't. It's pretty seamless. The approach to the songs is pretty seamless. It's still it was a sledgehammer effect. And yeah, I don't think we ever did a song properly. We thought we did.
We would find songs that fit us, that we thought our audience would like, and we'd play them with a vengeance. But that said, unintentionally, we always made the song our own. Our covers, we always played everything way too fast. Caffeined out, no drugs, but speed was our friend.
I always had Twisted Sister started thrash music and hardcore thrash because they would play, you know, Tutti Frutti 1,000 miles an hour, you know, blow your head off.
I remember a couple of times where they would play songs. I mean, it could be even a song by AC/DC. And the next morning I'd go out and get the record, and sometimes I'd be disappointed in the record.
The cover band rule was pretty strict. Again, you know, people want to hear what they want to hear. As time went on, bands were able to slip maybe 1 or 2 original songs in there. And that's how that came about. You know, they wanted to play their own music, but the cover stuff is what people wanted to hear. So it was pretty strict.
We were playing material by the best of the best, as good if not better than them, in my opinion, and a lot of others. But it also was a double-edged sword, because that, you know, down the road, we needed to inject our original material, and our material had to be up to snuff with the best of the best that we performed. And that put us in a bit of a quandary sometimes.
If we ran into a club, and it was usually in Jersey when it would happen, that they said, please just do covers, you know, don't do any of your own stuff, we would just play our stuff, but just never make an announcement of it. Just play it. Club owners wouldn't know what we were playing. So, and that was a good way to tell how your stuff was going over. If you didn't tell people, here we are, here's our song, you know, you just play it. And if people would ask about, what was that song you played, then you knew, you know, it was something that had been worth putting together.
Club owners would say, you know, don't play originals, but they don't really care as long as you're packing a room. They don't care what you're playing. If you make a big deal of saying this is an original, and then people walk out, the club owner's going to remember that. So we would never say it. You know, we would just play it.
You know, I'd go see them for a long time, and it took me quite a long time before I knew that the song they used to come out to all the time, What You Don't Know, I didn't know that was one of their own songs. Took a long time for me to finally learn that was actually one of their tunes. I figured it was just, some obscure Priest song.
I think everybody at Atlantic thought they sucked, frankly, as did every other record company. I mean, there's this group that would insist on wearing girls' dresses to perform in, and they didn't think they were pushing the barriers of rock and roll any further forward. But I kind of did. I thought they had something in their live performance which was rather special, that no one else was doing. You just had to get it. And if you were lucky, if you could get it on record, then I thought we could do quite well. But I must be honest, I was never expecting it to go gold, let alone platinum. I thought we'd reach a pretty nice plateau, make a bit of money, have a good time, and that would be it.
So Phil says, I'm going to sign you guys. So he did, to one of the worst record deals on the planet.
I said to the guys that if Phil could bring an offer to the table, that's the one we should take. Because in too many instances, the people who signed the band had no power to make sure the band was promoted and marketed. That A&R people had no control over that. But with Phil being the head of the UK office and also the senior vice president of Atlantic International, he had relationships all over the globe. And when he signed the project and said, hey, this is my next project, the troops marched.
Once I knew I was in the band, I decided I needed a new name. This was a new start, a new beginning, and I wanted a new name to go with it. I really looked up to JJ. He was older than me. He was in Twisted Sister. I really thought he was something, and I figured he would be the man to ask. Danny, I felt I had kind of crashed and burned with Danny, so I asked JJ to come up with a name. And Jay said, I'll think about it, came back, and he said, what about D? Like Dee Dee Ramone, but just D. And I said, that's it, I like it.
Let me tell you something. People say to me, what's the best show we ever played? They assume it is in some arena somewhere in the world. They would assume it would be in a coliseum. They would assume it's in front of 80,000 people. All the famous, obvious, cliched observations. No. The best night for me, and I mentioned this to the other guys, and I don't think it resonated with them, but it resonated with me. You play these bars night after night, year after year. You look for validation. You look for the next sign. This one night at Speaks, the date, it doesn't roll off me, but it's not hard to find because it was the date that the Dick Clark 25th anniversary of Rock and Roll show was broadcast on ABC. And it was a Saturday night. And I wanted to watch this show. And it went on from 9 to 11. It was 2 hours. So this is 79, right? So I think I brought a little black and white television in. And we sat in the dressing room, mesmerized. Now, normally we go on between 10:30 and 11. It's like a kind of floats in there, 10:30 to 11. Usually about 10:45. And Uncle Ralphie from Speaks would come in and go, hey, you're late. What time you going on? You know, like that kind of thing. Like in a funny kind of way, you know, in that lovable Goodfellas kind of way that all these club owners used to do. But this 25th anniversary thing was kind of getting us pumped because it was great performances. It was, Little Richard and Elvis Presley and the Beatles, and it was building and building and building and building. And we're watching it, at least for me, my memory, and I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. And now it's like maybe 10 to 11. And Ralphie comes in and goes, hey, you're supposed to be on. And I think I said, man, let us watch the end of this show. Now, it ended, if I'm not mistaken, with Springsteen doing Rosalita at the bottom line, which is a famous clip. Whatever it was, when we walked on stage that night and played that show, that set, the first of 3 sets, that night, something happened. Some spiritual, otherworldly from the clouds came down and permeated my body, and it was like there was blood on the walls of Speaks. Speaks was big, not huge, but big, held about 2,000 people, it packed. And the reaction was loud, the loudest I'd ever heard. And the power of the band was devastating. It was just punching people. And the set built, and the set built, and the set built. And when the set ended, I walked off stage thinking that was the greatest set we ever played. That justifies everything that's I've ever done. It's justified every relationship that's ever gone to hell. It justified me dropping out of school. It justified the firing of all these ex-members and putting up with the crap of the guys who said to me I wasn't going to be worth it, and without them I was never going to make it, and all of that stuff was exercised. And one of our friends, Scott Offner, comes up to me and he says, what the hell happened? And I said, you noticed that too? He said, I've never seen anything like it. And I said, I've never seen anything like it either, and I may never see anything like it again. Okay? So when you say to yourself, what piece of fuel does it take to get you through the next day? That night got me through the next 2 years. I was convinced that we deserved to walk in the shadows of the giants. That's how great the band was. I was absolutely convinced that we deserved a shot because we were as good as any band could ever be.
This must have been right around the time with like the the Mel and Keith truck incident. We had played at a place, and at the end of the week, after we paid for like all of the stuff that we had going on, we had some big bills. We ended up like taking home $18 a piece. And I remember Sunday night looking at this thing, said, "This is ridiculous. I might as well work at a department store." And so we ended up quitting, and he got a job as a waiter, and I got a job working in a hardware department of a sporting goods department of like one of these like chain department stores for a while. And it actually was kind of neat because it was different.
I have no job, and I called my sister-in-law, whose brother was the manager of Terrace on the Park Caterers in Flushing Meadow. And he hires me as a waiter, something I've never done in my life. But you know what? I'm 22, I'm young, I'll learn, I need money. Not having worked as a waiter, it was kind of mind-blowing because I wound up taking care of 40 people and 2 tables, and I never served anything. And Terrace on the Park is a very expensive catering hall, which only the best waiters work. So I'm kind of like a fish out of water. I'm not getting much help. The maitre d's don't like me because I'm there, meaning one of their favorite waiters is gone. And the waiters don't like me because I'm there and one of their buddies is gone. So after humiliating myself for the first couple of days, I'm kind of in the back area, just kind of bemoaning my fate. I can't do French service. I can't do anything. I need to hold on to a job. I need to make money. And this waiter kind of sees me and he goes, "What's up?" I said, "Wow, man." I goes, "I need this gig. I'm broke. I don't know what the hell I'm doing." I said, "I'm a relative of management." He kind of rolled his eyes. I said, "I really need help." He says, "Okay." He says, "So what did you do?" I said, "I was in a band before this." Now, keep in mind, Twisted Sister at this point was just a bar band. I don't know how many people we played to, but I didn't know if we had any significance whatsoever. So I say I was in a band, a club band. He goes, "Oh, what band?" I said, "No, it doesn't really matter." He says, "No, really, what band?" I said, "Twisted Sister." He says, "Twisted Sister? Really? Which guy are you?" You know, the guitar player, JJ. He goes, "You got to be kidding. That's you?" Because I was wearing the short hair wig over my long hair. And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, man, that's really funny." I said, "What's so funny about that?" He goes, "My girlfriend has like a crush on you. Wait till I tell her you're a waiter." I'm like, wow, I've never been dissed like that before. But he said, "Okay, but now that I can make fun of you, I'll help you." Well, first off, when it crashed and it came back, we were making... I remember making $28 a night and my agent coming down and wanting $2.80. I remember specifically that instance when the guy showed up at this club and said, "I want the commission." And I went, "Wow, you came all this way to pick up $2.80. Now, people, yeah, that's what he gets paid. I get it. I think at the moment of realization that it was $2.80, it wasn't that I was angry that he came for it. I think if he had asked for it in a nicer fashion, it would have been better. I just thought it was ludicrous. Okay, why don't we wait 3 weeks? I'll send you a whopping check for $10 maybe, and we'll add up 3 weeks of work or something. But for that time, that one time that the guy came down, he was the partner of Kevin Brenner. His name is Marty Hoberman, who's no longer alive. And Marty was just the cheapest bastard on the planet. I mean, everyone hated him, and this just kind of reinforced his cheapness, that he came down to get his $2 and his pound of flesh, his $2.80. We paid him. I had to borrow it, but we paid him.
This one is just a lovely, lovely love ballad. For all the lovers here tonight, all the girls and guys staring at each other in your eyes. Oh, darling. Yes, sweetheart. You're sitting on my tit. Sorry, babe. This one's for you. It's called Destroyer.
There were no really attractive women in the front for Twisted Sister because I viewed them all as thinking they were better than us. And I would just brutalize them, verbally attack them and humiliate them till they would leave. The guys were not very pleased with that. They were like, what are you doing to us? But it wasn't true to the Dee Snider mantra. It had to be honest. I had to be real. It had to be, about people like me. And I had to stand up for the underdog. And just because they would come up to the front and they think they were, so hot, and they wouldn't clap, and they would pull their normal routine, which worked wonders on somebody who wasn't immune to their superpowers. And since I had super hot girl as my girlfriend, I really didn't need them. So I could afford to abuse them and humiliate them. And the crowd loved it.
I mean, I was worse than that. I would tell my girlfriends, by the way, let me make this really clear. You're number 2. Like, I thought I was doing them a favor by telling him this. That my mother would have been proud of me. Listen, I have a band and I have you, and you're number 2, and you'll always be number 2. So if you can't do it being number 2, don't be my girlfriend. And they would want to be my girlfriend, but that conversation, now, I don't know if I should have lied to them and said, by the way, this is really great, but I thought I was doing them a big favor. Anyway, it sunk every relationship I was with.
Oh, darling, I said it before, I'll say it again. I'm not a fucking fruit stand. You don't like it when the boys grab your peaches, so stay away from my fucking grapes, okay? Shit!
Stony Brook Mad Hatter was a unique club because I stood stage right next to the entrance to the ladies' bathroom, and I had an extra long cord. And on the third set, while we were playing, I would go in there and I'd walk into a stall, again, while playing, and my spandex pants would be down around my ankles, and the women would line up, and we'd have fun. Again, while we were playing on stage, and I would spend probably half the set in the ladies' room, come out with a big smile on my face. A lot of women wiping their mouths.
We were playing like 5-6 nights a week, and the money was definitely getting better, and we were getting booked by a small agency in New Jersey, Lou Mang. Well, Lou had managed to find a spot for us on the bill to play with Mott the Hoople at a place called the Sunshine Inn in Asbury Park. And Asbury Park was a very well-known shore place, concerts and that type of thing. What we found out was that this was actually a bus barn, that they had built a stage in the end. So at the same time, we were very excited because we were playing some of their material and really gotten to like them a lot. And there was another band called Thulkundra. I don't know exactly what that means. So they were kind of like the house band. They came up to us and said, look guys, don't worry, if you get booed off the stage, it happens all the time, no big deal. And we were the opening act. Well, we hit it, and this was the first time we actually played on a big stage with a real sound system. And we just went, the adrenaline was just incredible. And it had, real stage lights, and the place was packed. And we just came out of the starting gate and just hit them over the head, and they went crazy. And we were we weren't quite expecting it, but we were going to give it to them. Because with it, we didn't want to get booed off the stage. And so we walked off the stage, and meanwhile, Falcundra comes back on, and they're kind of looking at us like, who are these guys? With the makeup and banging on the guitars and all this. So they were a lot more serious, and they ended up getting booed off the stage. So it was really something. And then Mott the Hoople came on, and we were just enthralled at how great they sounded.
What I knew about Twisted Sister, I used to see them in the papers, in the local papers, was that they were Mott the Hoople's favorite band, which was one of their catchphrases. Twisted Sister makes New York Dolls look like paper mache. Ian Hunter said in the ads. It's like, wow, Ian Hunter said this about them. Apparently Ian Hunter's people threatened to sue them, and they had to stop saying that.
I'd been now managing the band alone since we reformed in '75, and I found that the daily grind of playing and managing became next to impossible. I was really reaching the end of my ability to handle it. I wasn't sleeping at night because I'd get in at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then all of a sudden I get a phone call at 8 or 9. Oh, this emergency is happening. This is going on. That's going on, and oh my God! And then I can't sleep, and now I can't sleep. I can't make decisions. The band's fighting constantly. The road crew's this. The truck's got a problem. The lights have a problem. I mean, I'll give you a story to exemplify what a crazy night could be. We play Speaks one night. I get home. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. A phone call comes in from my driver. Listen, man, there's a problem. The back door of the truck opened up on the Long Island Expressway. The equipment fell out. What are you talking about? Yeah, I pulled the truck over. I ran into the middle of the highway. A big truck comes and runs over one of our mixing consoles. And I'm trying to process this in my sleep. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? The truck door opened on the LIE. And he says, yeah, man, well, I don't know exactly when the truck door opened, but the mixing console got crushed. And I said, well, where was the mixing console? It was in the middle of the truck. Well, then where's the stuff in front of it? He goes, well, that's the whole thing. The mic stands, the trunk, the amps, they're all gone. What do you mean they're all gone? Well, yeah, I can't find them, man. I pulled over, and then I drove back to Speaks, and I looked at every gully, and the equipment, like we're missing 90% of the equipment. I'm thinking, oh my God, how fucked up are you guys? How the hell could you let that happen? What are we going to do? And now I can't sleep. I'm freaking out. And it's like 6 a.m., and I call the club just on a whim, and I get this old custodian guy, and he gets on the phone. I go, it's JJ Twisted. Twisted says, how come all your stuff is here from last night? Pack the stuff. I said, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, there's cases and mic stands. I said, what do you mean there's cases and mic stands? He says, yeah. I said, well, could you count them? So he comes back, goes, yes, 18 mic stands of 17 cases. Blah, blah, blah. So I call my guy up. I go, the reason why it's not in the truck is because you guys are so fucked up you forgot to pack it. And he says to me, there's no way. We pack that truck methodically every night. And I said, I don't know what fucking drug that you and the rest of the crew took, but you all thematically and simultaneously hallucinated that you packed this 24-foot truck because all this fucking equipment is at the club. It's impossible. I said, no, it's not impossible because this 80-year-old fucking custodian could give a shit. And he's telling me it's all there, so you better go get it. I get a phone call. Uncle Ralphie, it Speaks. He calls me up. It's now 7 a.m. He goes, hey, JJ, it's Uncle Ralph. I go, hey, Uncle Ralph. He goes, hey, tell me something. What's with your fucking road crew? I go, why? He says, because after the night was over, I went to the East Bay Diner with the crew, his crew, Speaks crew. He goes, I'm eating, and Fat Scotty runs in. He goes, hey, Ralphie, there's mic stands all over Long Beach Road. So I get in my car, I drive down Long Beach Road, and there's all your fucking equipment stretched out for about 2 fucking miles. And at the end of it, some guy's putting it in the back of a truck. So I pull out my gun. I say, excuse me, sir, that shit belongs to me. He very nicely brings everything back to the club. And we get all the equipment back. And what do we find? We find that they packed the truck. As the truck was pulling out of the parking lot, it was in the middle of wintertime. They had not padlocked the back lock. The lock popped off. The door opened up, and the equipment falls out over 2 miles on Long Beach Road. But we get it all back. Talk about validating that God's looking over your shoulder. That was one of those nights that got me through. However, it dawned on me around this period that, you know what? I need help.
The band asked me to join. Kenny had left, and I immediately started rehearsing with them. My father was very sick and dying. I remember it was December 7th, 1978, and he died. I was scheduled to go on stage with Twisted Sister on December 10th. Before he died, I went and visited him. He knew he was going to die, And I was there alone, and he grabbed my hand and he said to me, no matter what happens to me, you keep going. You understand me? No matter what happens. And I'm like, yeah, Dad, I will. But he grabbed me really tight. I said, yes, I heard you. So I called the band and I said, we're going to do this. We're still on schedule for December 10th. Father died the 7th. We buried him on the 9th. December 10th, I was on first day on stage with Twisted Sister in Zaffy's in Piscataway, New Jersey. So it was like the happiest time of my life and the saddest. I remember going on stage and it was just a great feeling. And then the first break between the first and second set, I was literally crying. You know, I just buried my father the day before. But here I am playing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday with Twisted Sister 4 days in a row. It was pretty wild.
When it came to the UK, it's a much smaller pond, and if you can get on the front cover or into certain key magazines, you know, that impact is felt straight away. And they did that. They were on the cover of Sounds magazine, Ross Halford Photographs, cover of Kerrang magazine, were covered in all the press, and just got this great story going. And I think what went against them in America, perhaps by being loud and brash and out there and outrageous, was what worked for them in the UK, because they stood out a lot in the UK market, which was slightly more drab than the Technicolor American market, and worked brilliantly right from the beginning, and they really captured people's imagination. It was never really a problem for us that the band wasn't big in America, didn't have a record deal in America, because when I started on Kerrang around issue 8, probably in the very early 80s, and there was no real competition to Kerrang at that time. It was a really unique magazine, and it was run hopefully professionally, but it was run essentially by rock fans. So we did what we thought was right as fans. So if we thought something was good, we just assumed somebody else who was also a rock fan would like it too. So we never really second-guessed ourselves about should we cover this band or that band. We never asked ourselves what they'd really sold or whether this successful or that successful. Just was it any good? Was it a good story? And also, could Kerrang become a part of helping them develop? So hopefully Kerrang helped Twisted Sister, because we liked them, to get a foothold in the English marketplace. And they never let us down, I think. And we knew we backed a winner, I think, when we went up with Twisted Sister. They were great from the beginning. Now, I think they developed a great rapport with the British audiences pretty much from day one, because people here, I think, were very much aware, one, they were the real thing. It wasn't a gimmick, despite the way they looked, which could have been a kind of novelty, I guess. People knew it wasn't that. They were serious musicians and serious heavy metal fans. They loved the music. People knew they'd been through tough times and that they'd come out the other end of it, and they'd never given up their dream. And I think it says that in their songs, the whole I am, I'm me thing, not changing what you believe in. A lot of their songs were about growing up as a kid, having people tell you, forget heavy metal, it's a waste of time, don't look like that, look like that, wear a suit, go and get a proper job. Now, we've all experienced that as heavy metal fans growing up. I think we all confused our parents quite a lot. I'm sure some people still do, and they became, I think, the spokespeople for that particular part of people's development as young people, I think, because everyone needs you need a voice if you're growing up and you feel alienated, you feel alone, So when I grew up, I had no friends who liked heavy metal music at all. I went to gigs on my own a lot of the times, because it's quite sad to admit that, but I still went, So you welcome people like that who make you think, no, you're part of something bigger than yourself. That's supporting a football team, I guess. You're part of something bigger. You wear the colours, you support a certain team. And they were like that. People wore their colours and supported their particular team because they were for real. Myself and the very small staff that were there, we'd never worked on a magazine like that before. I mean, I'd done a little bit of training as a journalist. I'd worked on a magazine called Accountants Weekly that was about accountancy. I also worked on a magazine called Tunnels and Tunnelling, which was about tunnelling. I'd worked on a magazine that was about operations as well, a medical magazine. So I was delighted to be on Kerrang when I got there. I thought, my God, what am I doing? I need to be writing about music. So I was very passionate about it when I got there. I loved it, and my colleagues felt the same. So we just kind of went with it, and we felt it was very much a part of what we were as people. And we felt, because we'd never had a magazine like that ourselves growing up as metal fans, we wanted to do something really special for other metal fans as well, to be some kind of link, some kind of communication between the bands and the fans. And pre-internet, it was really important to have a magazine like that, I think, where you could phone up, know what was going on, and report that back, to the fans straight away. So I think we loved the job, and felt that bands like Twisted Sister, who we personally liked, were bands that we should just support whether they had a record deal, whether they were successful or not, because we thought they could become successful.
Britain, radio wasn't like it was in the States. We didn't have rock and roll radio in Britain at all at the time. What we had was state-run radio. We had Radio 1, state-approved music, and we had commercial rivals who were playing pretty much pop stuff. And late at night, you had DJs like John Peel who would play more erratic stuff, more punky stuff, more adventurous songs. But it wasn't a rock show. There wasn't anyone playing metal bands. There wasn't anyone playing rock bands. You didn't hear Iron Maiden very much or anyone like that. So rock bands were big through the music papers and through live performance. That's how we knew about them. That's how everyone found out about them. There might be one rock show a week, on a weekend. That's all we had. So expectations about bands were different. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why Twisted Sister made such an impact, or why Britain in particular was fertile ground for Twisted Sister, because we didn't have that. We didn't have that same constraints on the music we listened to. We wanted to go out and find our music. We wanted it to be raw and rough-edged. We wanted it to be rowdy and raucous, and that's how Twisted Sister were.
You could get all the journalists to see them live, and particularly with Twisted, the way they were, because the shows were so immense, people would just come away from it going, wow, I've just seen this great band, and they'd all talk about it to their friends. You'd get the journalists there, they'd interview them, they'd do a review of the show, so you're getting extra press all the time. And if you could string a few shows together, it was fantastic. I always thought that looking at this band, if I can't get press on this band, I don't deserve to be doing this job. And we managed to get them so much press, it was crazy. And that was the way you had to break bands in those days, because you definitely weren't going to get any airplay, which was the problem for record companies in America, I guess. They knew that they weren't going to get any airplay, so that was how they broke bands. They didn't have the same press culture that we do. It was probably a difficult proposition for them at that particular time, but for me, I looked at it different. It was down to breaking them through live shows and the press, and that makes it much easier for me to get stuck into them. Within no time at all, we flew them back over to the UK to record. I figured it was better if they came to the UK and I could control it a bit more, and that worked really well. I think they enjoyed the experience, and it was certainly a different experience for them than the recording they'd done in America. We took them to a very nice studio out in the country called Park Gates, and we got a friend of mine called Pete Way from UFO to do the production work. And Pete hadn't really done that much production work at that time, but I thought he understands that sort of music, and I thought he'd do a good job, and he did. I was very pleased with the job. But he's an incredible character. He can drink for England, and I don't think he was actually sober for the entire experience, and probably can't remember very much of it. But he did a good job, and it was funny.
What we were seeing in Britain at that time was a bit of a grassroots reaction against what we term now the punk elite. Punk had sold itself as being working class and from tower blocks and about the unemployed, but it wasn't. I loved the music, but a lot of those early punks were very art school. They were posing about it. They made great records, but they weren't what they pretended to be. And by 3 years after really punk broke big, by then people started to realise it, and they were looking for something new, something more real.
In the early 80s, very early 80s, I was running a label called Secret Records. It was predominantly a punk label. We were doing bands like Exploited and the Foreskins and the Business, and it was a lot of fun. It was very exciting. The bands it was kind of punk second time around, and everybody was really into it. And we charted every record that we put out in the national chart, so that was unheard of, really.
The music press said that metal was dead. The music press said rock was dead. Everyone had jumped. All the writers, all the main writers had jumped completely into punk and new wave, and they said that all the rest of it was moribund, and it was just boring old people, and it was just completely out of touch. It turned out they were the ones out of touch, because the new wave of British heavy metal started in '79, but it reached out and connected with people, because all over the country lots of young kids were coming out to see bands like, particularly Iron Maiden, Def Leppard, Saxon. All these bands were connecting with an audience that the music papers told us wasn't there anymore, and so they were looking for people all the time. So they were looking for new people to go and see, and you had a wave of bands like the Ruts and the Skids and the Cockney Rejects who were coming along as the real punk deal. But also you had a lot of the bands that were parallel to punk, who were exciting, hard rock bands like Motorhead and like Iron Maiden, who were never part of punk but were appealed to a punk crowd. They were taking off too. They were becoming very, very big because they were attracting people who were just fed up with all the posers. They didn't want the posers. They wanted something down to earth and gritty. And Twisted Sister, above all, were down to earth and gritty, and they had a really loud, powerful sound. They had great songs, they had anthems, and so instantly you've got a connection. If you want your music loud and you want something to sing along to, Twisted Sister supplied it.
We rented a Winnebago and drove 56 hours out to Salt Lake City, and the Winnebago then broke down, and Mark got underneath it, and repaired it like he would in Long Island, right? All to play 29 minutes. But we were hell-bent on playing those 29 minutes. I mean, that's what you do, right? Because you have to prove yourself. And we did that. Then we got that Winnebago and we drove to Denver, and we played in Denver, and the Winnebago broke down again. And we played our 29-minute set. And then on their way to Tucson, we broke down in Raton, New Mexico. And the breakdown in Raton, New Mexico, was really bizarre, because I didn't want Dee to get out of the car because he would have scared everybody. It was like the Elephant Man. It was like, oh my God, keep him inside. That's like probably the most Christian town in the world. So we're stuck outside of a diner, and I walk into the Annie Get Your Gun bar, and I speak to this Thailand custodian who said to me, oh yeah, the owner's name is Pistol Mangino, call him up, I told him we were the Southern Cross Band. I put on a Southern accent, so we're the Southern Cross Band when Winnebago broke down, and eventually we got a rent-a-cars. We didn't have a Winnebago, and we did the tour of rent-a-cars. You know what? Because that's what you do. Ask the Police. When you ask them, when their album went triple platinum here, they were in freezing in rent-a-cars in New York. I think we already knew that was going to happen, and we didn't care.
Strangely, the glam rockers who were here didn't take to Twisted Sister, really. I mean, a band like Hanoi Rocks sold themselves as being, they saw themselves as being a European version of the New York Dolls, and they were very much into that effete, posy, pouty look. And so for a band like Hanoi Rocks, Twisted Sister were just an abomination because they were such big geezers. They were like macho. So Hanoi Rocks mouthed off about Twisted Sister in sounds, I think. Thinking like they slagged off everybody. They had to go at everybody, and they got away with it. But when Twisted Sister found out about it, they went nuts. They were like proper blokes. They thought, no, we're not having this said about us. They challenged Hanoi Rocks to a fight, a street fight. And I spent an afternoon going around, it was a Sunday, walking around Covent Garden with Twisted Sister, where the venue for this fight was supposed to be. But of course, Hanoi Rocks completely bottled it, didn't show up at all. And it was hilarious. It was a bit like the scene in The Warriors, where he goes, Warriors come out to play. It was like Hanoi Rocks come out to play, and his D calling them out, and of course they weren't there, they'd run away. Years later, Hanoi Rocks supported them and didn't mention any of their criticisms at all, completely lost their bottle over that.
So when Twisted Sister first arrived in London, it was all hands on deck really to show them the ropes, help the crew prep the shows, and show the guys around London a bit. And obviously that was the beginning of things really taking off, and they needed a fan club. They were making a big record, every band had a fan club, but obviously funds were tight still at that time, and by default I became the fan club secretary. I just used my home address, my little apartment, sent out these letters that Dee had composed, and suddenly there were 200, 300, 400 letters a day coming into my flat, and it was, oh my God, how are we going to cope with this? And during that time, suddenly there was a phone call or a knock on the door. I can't remember if they phoned me first or if they just turned up at the door, and it was the police, and they said, we've had a complaint from a fan's mother about the Twisted Sister fan club letter. The fan club letter that I was sending out was an introduction that Dee had composed with the rest of the band, I guess. But they called the fan club the Sick Motherfuckers, and they were all known as the Sick Motherfucking Friends of Twisted Sister. So the mother had underlined all the times that motherfucker and fucking this and fucking that was written in the letter, and reported it to the police, and that's how it came about. And I come in, talked to the policeman and showed him the album sleeve. He said, "Who's this band?" And I explained to him, and he said, "Oh, it's, you know, no big deal." And I was kind of led to believe that nothing would come of it. But then they wanted to formally interview me, so I was advised to get a solicitor. And I was still laughing at this point, thinking this is absolutely crazy. And but then obviously when I had to be formally interviewed with a solicitor, it then became more serious, and I think that was at the point where I told the band, and they were incredulous because they thought, well, a swear word in a fan club letter that had been requested, and yet our national newspapers have naked women all over them. So I don't think they really thought anything was going to come of it at that point either. And then the next thing they said, "You're going to be formally charged," and the charge is sending in indecent literature through the post, because it wasn't the swear word per se, it's once you put that piece of mail in the Royal Mail, it is the Royal Mail and therefore the property of the Queen, and therefore an offence against the Queen. So I went up to the court. It was the BBC, the news cameras were there, radio, and it was very daunting actually. And then we went through the court case. I was found guilty, fined £500. I didn't know, but I could actually have been sent to prison for 6 months. And then I was still quite in shock. And a policeman said, "Right, we need to take you down to the police station now." And I was escorted out of the court down to the police station. They did let me do the TV interview before they took me, and went through a door marked prisoners, and then it was all a bit too scary, and I was fingerprinted and mugshotted and then sent home. And when we got on the train to come back to London, and I hadn't really understood the charges prior to this, but then I thought, well, if it's the offence is actually putting it in the post, I didn't do that. Atlantic Records did that. I filled the envelopes. My name was on the fan club letter, but I stuffed the envelopes, addressed them, gave them all to Atlantic, and they posted them. And I looked at the evidence there, and it had clearly a WEA frank mark on the envelope. And I said to the barrister, I said, "You know, how come I've been charged with this when, you know, there's the evidence?" And the barrister looked at the solicitor and went, "Oh, crumbs." So there we are. Funnily enough, one of the things I do now is I volunteer with a Saturday school to help kids with their English and science. And obviously you have to get checked before you can work with children. And up it came, and it's actually under the Obscene Publications Act that I was convicted of sending indecent literature through the mail. And I did have to go and explain myself to the powers that be, who thought that it was actually quite funny, and they still allowed me to work with the children.
So finally, we get to tour the States. Our agency stuffs us onto a 2-act package. Blackfoot Crocus, we're the 3rd act on a 2-band package. And we're given 20 minutes to do our set, which, you know, that's a warm-up, but it's something. We'll do it. We get in an RV, we head out to Salt Lake City to play our first national show. And we pull into Salt Lake City, which is Salt Lake City. A little unnerving. And of course, this is the first time we've ever been west of New Jersey. But it is what it is, and this is what we've been working for so long. So, roll up the sleeves, let's go. We had 20 minutes. We had been added very late. Originally, the show was scheduled to go on at 7:30 in all markets. Instead, now it's become a 7 o'clock show so they can fit us in without overtime bills coming. None of the promoters are real happy about that. We're costing them money, and they've never heard of us. And to boot, it's still not enough time, so we decide we're going to go on about 7 or 8 minutes before even the announced start time, just so we can get a running start into what's going to be a very truncated show anyway. And it's kind of a weird feeling because there's, not a lot of people in the building, although there are more people in at 6:45 than I would expect for a show that most people think starts at 7:30. I'd say maybe a third, maybe 40% of a house. And at 10 to 7, we roll the intro tape, and 2 minutes later, the band comes out, house lights are dark, and the intro tape fades out, and we start What You Don't Know. And with the backlighting, which doesn't really exist, I could swear I see fists in the air. But I must be imagining it because we're a couple thousand miles plus from anywhere that knows who the heck we are. And finally, at the end of the long intro piece for What You Don't Know, when the drum does that little roll and all the lights, such as they were, come up and you can finally see the band and see a little bit of the first few rows, damned if the people in front aren't on their feet. And if the people right in front of me and Charlie, out in the middle of the house, aren't standing on their chairs, throwing their fists in the air, rocking out. And I'm looking at Charlie, and Charlie's looking at me like, we are in Salt Lake. What is going on? It's not what an opening act slot's supposed to be. They've got their drugs timed for the headliner. They're not supposed to be paying any attention to us at all. So at the end of the set, I look at Charlie in utter amazement, and I hear, out of the corner of my ear, as it were, one of the kids say, I told you, man, I used to see these guys, it speaks all the time. And the little light bulb goes off, and it dawns on me. While we've only played this small geographic area, it's the geographic area that sends out college students across the country or accepts college students from everywhere. And all these people, all these fans that we've sowed these little Johnny Appleseed seeds, and we've got a national fan base that we didn't even know we had. There were only a couple nights where the band got smoked. One was obviously when we opened for Judas Priest when we were still a club act, and that was bound to happen. The one that really stands out is the beginning of the Stay Hungry tour in England. Anvil was our support act, and the first night they went out and bludgeoned the crowd with this incredible heavy show and killed them. And we went out doing the first run through of what was going to be the arena set for Stay Hungry with a couple pop songs and a couple hits and not a lot of metal, and they blew us off the fucking stage. And that was not A, comfortable feeling, or B, a common feeling. Unlike most bands will come back from an experience like that and kid themselves and say, well, Anvil was really good tonight. We were good, because at the end we'd gotten a great reaction, but the Twisted had done it by pulling out the tricks and, verbal tricks and audience humiliation, just shaming people into clapping. And even though at the end they got the reaction, in the dressing room, they knew they got beat. They got taken. They didn't like it. Anvil, on the other hand, loved it. But one of the great things about rock touring, it's like baseball. Another game tomorrow night. Anvil, fresh from this performance, came out the next night loaded for bear, and they just threw everything into it. And that is a good, heavy rock band. And they played a killer set that night. And we gave them extra time to play like 2 encores, and they walked off the stage that night thinking, that's it. This whole tour, we're just going to waste them. Right? And they were feeling pretty good, and with good reason. They had earned it. Unbeknownst to them, Twisted had rewritten the entire set, had taken out a bunch of the softer stuff, and I remember when we came out that night, Anvil was standing on the side of the stage, ready to bask in their glory again. But from the first note that night, it was like popping a balloon. All the air left. The guys went out just as if, oh yeah, fool me once, motherfucker. You know, not again. They went out and beat the living hell out of the audience with metal. The phrases left them slamming the bloody stump of a neck where a head used to be against the edge of the stage. It was that kind of night. It was the heaviest, hardest, meanest, loudest, most incredible ass whipping I've ever seen in my life. And from that point on, the tour went great because there was mutual respect between the two bands. Anvil never went on thinking they could do that to us again. And we enjoyed having a great band open for us.
Twisted Sister spent 10 years playing bars. Not by design, but by happenstance. We were confronted with challenges all over the place, and we learned so much. And so the 10 years we spent clawing our way through the bar scene, and every lesson learned of rejection was all, for me anyway, was learning how to make order out of chaos, how to confront bad situations, how to win in bad situations and prepare us for the future. When we said goodbye to New Jersey, literally, we went over the George Washington Bridge at the end by 1983 on that first tour, and we kind of waved. I said, that's done, right? That was a 10-year gestation period of learning everything you needed to learn to get yourself prepared for the next level. And it was unique to Twisted. I don't know any other band's story like this. I talked to hundreds of bands, and nobody's ever gone through what we went through. So it meant everything to us. It's who we are. It's why we are and why we do what we do. I would never change it for the world. My best memories are those 10 years, because those are the battles that were fought. I mean, the fact that we are here 38 years later is because of those first 10 years. I'm absolutely convinced about that. When managers and agents and record labels bemoan the fact that bands come and go and they break up, and well, you know what? We just forged ahead. We're the last of a breed, a bar band that made good.
I always said our fans have always been our greatest asset. They were the ones who kept us going in the darkest times. They're the ones who believed in us, and they had belief. But their belief came from our belief. I was Brian Koppelman, who worked for Elektra Records. He's Charles Koppelman's kid. And when he signed my band Desperado to Elektra, he told me he had seen Twisted Sister 45 times. So I took the opportunity to ask him why. Why did you see Twisted Sister 45 times? He said, let me think about that. Came back a few days later and he said, I saw you 45 times because I believed you believed. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you were so committed. You were so convinced that the band was going to succeed. I had no choice but to join your army and join you in this quest. And that's what the stage raps, a lot of them were about back then. I don't know if the tapes bear out. This commitment that we were going to persevere and we were going to go to the mountaintop and we would make it against all odds. And we were taking them with us. I always wondered how the fans felt. And when we finally broke through and became that huge, they must have felt so vindicated. Did the Donnas of the world feel vindication for their undying 5-day-a-week, travel everywhere, Twisted Sister, diehard support?
Did they?
Yeah.
Yes and no. They did feel vindicated that here's the band they supported all this time, and it proved finally they were right. Okay? But at the same time, put the thing down. But at the same time, they lost you.
The diamond in the pocket theory. I know it well. That is, you got a diamond in your pocket and nobody knows it's a diamond. And they don't believe it's a diamond. And you polish it and you're showing everybody you can, it's a diamond, it's a diamond, it's a diamond. And nobody believes you. Then one day suddenly everybody realizes it is a diamond. And they take the diamond and they put it on display in a case where everybody can view it and everybody can see it, and all of a sudden you're pushed to the back of the crowd, and it's no longer your diamond, it's everybody's diamond, and there's this sense of loss. Happened with me with AC/DC and Queen, and I know it had to happen with Twisted Sister fans who were so committed, they believe so much, and they wake up one day and realize it's no longer their band, it's everybody's band. And there's a sense of abandonment I'm sure they felt. There's nothing you can do about it. It sucks to be the band who's it sucks to be the fan who's abandoned, and it sucks to be the band who's abandoned by the fan because they feel like they've lost something.
Okay. Good.
Do a little room tone, please. Just like 30 seconds.
We all go through the same shit, and nothing is ever good enough, and nothing is ever big enough, and even to the Beatles. After a while, what every band in the world wants, they hated. It became a trap. So what is Paul McCartney's summation of the Beatles? This is a summation. We were a good little band. Like at the end of it all, you know what? We were a good little band. That's it. That's a summation of 8 astonishing years changing over the entire history of Western civilization as it appeals to certain human beings on the planet Earth is a good little band. Or Keith Richards' summation, the difference in the Beatles and the Stones. This is it, right?
I know that.
You know, of all the things you could possibly say, and all he says is, you had 4 frontmen, we had 1. And I'm thinking, that's the fucking point. Every band member has his own view of what he thinks anything means. And that's all the validity is to that one guy. And it's not Yoda, and it ain't the best, and it's not the last word. It's just, that's it. That's what you got out of that, Keith? Paul, that's really what you got out of it? You're a good little bit. That's it. Whoa, okay, maybe I'm missing something. Changed my life. What was Twisted to anybody? I mean, we were the embodiment of hopes and dreams of certain kids from Long Island in the tri-state area who wanted to be rock stars, and they could go to clubs and go, whoa, look at Twisted. But they're not signed yet. But they're going to get signed because they're almost there. We were that to somebody. But, you know, how important were we? We were a hard-working band, and we kicked ass in the tri-state area. But at the end of the day, you know, it's a living, right? We all make a living. And when I meet fans who say your lyrics or your stuff put me through, man, I go, wow, that's great. And I go, I never looked at a lyric in this band. I wouldn't know a song. I mean, it's embarrassing. I met a rabbi who was ordained to the lyrics of Tear It Loose. And it wound up on YouTube, the ordination of Rabbi Darby to the lyrics of Twisted Sister. And I wound up meeting him because someone in my building knew someone who went to the ordination and said, some rabbi, a deaf rabbi, mind you, let's make it even more ridiculous. A deaf rabbi was ordained to the music of Twisted Sister. A deaf rabbi named Rabbi Darby Lee, which doesn't sound like a rabbinical name. It sounds like a porn star. I mean, what rabbi's name is Darby Lee? I mean, rabbis are Shlomo Abramovitz, not Darby Lee. Sounds like a drummer for Motley Crue, right? So through a very strange circumstance, I meet the guy. I go out and have lunch with him. First off, you're a deaf guy. How are you a fan? I mean, like, you know, because people go, oh, God, you guys are so loud, you make us deaf. So here's the ultimate joke. And he says to me, when he was 14, his brother took him to see us at the Felt Forum. And it was the first metal band he ever saw. And the sound permeated his deafness, punched him in the chest, and he felt. And from there, he went on to like AC/DC and Black Sabbath and Judas Priest. And he's a huge metalhead. And the guy was really, I mean, he's a great guy. We've become friends. He's a wonderful guy. So I say to him, what song did you use to be ordained? He goes, Tear It Loose. Now, at the end of the day, if you look at Dee's lyrics, they're obviously not sex lyrics. They're like empowerment lyrics. It's very much self-empowerment. You can do this. You fight against the system. There's a rage there, but you turn it around and you fight for what's right, and you fight it's like some holier than thou kind of. I get it, because now that I know, I looked at some of his lyrics. He's a good writer, and it's all about winning the fight and fighting for the right of the right to not be pigeonholed and cataloged into some little slot. You have the right to be free and express yourself. I emailed Dee. I go, whoa. I just had lunch with the deaf rabbi who quoted Tear It Loose. I said, what the hell is Tear It Loose about? So he emails me back, and then with the final line, I'm glad someone's paying attention to my lyrics. This whole exercise of what Twisted Sister is to people, what we've meant to people, is all different from everybody else. To me, it's meant, I guess, it's in my life. You know, now it's 38 years into it, and it provides a living, and we've been really good, and we play really well. We're a really good live band. I think we're one of the best live bands out there. I'm really proud about that. We've sold a lot of records, and we've made a lot of people happy. Well, that's a really great feeling. I mean, it's a great feeling. People send letters, and your lyrics brought me to this. Your band made me feel better. I guess at the end of the day, we were a good little band.
Before we begin, we'd just like to remind you that the act you're about to see is not for the faint of heart.
Come on, baby! It's time to tear it loose! Twisted Sister was designed to overwhelm an audience. If you like what we're doing, show us you like what we're doing, mother.
In the mid-'70s in New York,
As soon as you left the city, it was a different world.
Long Island had this intense club area.
Unless you were a cover band, you weren't going to get a big crowd.
And nobody played original music.
We would be heard, we would be loud, we would do whatever it took to get your attention. The costume, the makeup.
Stealing our mom's clothes.
They weren't like pretty boys. It was like Cinderella's ugly sisters having a convention.
People would say all kinds of derogatory things about us. We were the poster children for the unsignable act.
We're ready! Are you ready?
They had the suburbs completely dominated.
This is our world. We're the #1 band in this world. Tell us a band is more popular than us. We're going to swim out there. We're going to eat them. Our fans start ripping the club physically apart.
They're the best live band in the world. I was called into Atlantic Records and told if I ever mentioned the name Twisted Sister, I would be fired.
I used to pick on people that would stand there, like I'm too cool.
You could go someplace else where you'll be more appreciated, because we could give two about you.
I got a lot of grief.
You'll follow around a bunch of guys wearing makeup and women's clothes.
The band turned that to their advantage. You're one of us. You're a dirtbag. And it banded people together.
Don't you know you can't run? Catastrophe struck. They never paid. We didn't get signed. We were derailed.
How are we going to come back from this? This was our shot.
You pick yourself up, dust yourself off, strap the spandex back on, and get back out there.
We had no budget, and we rented a Winnebago and drove 56 hours, all to play 29 minutes, and that's what you do.
Every town we went to, we made an impression. I just saw the future of rock and roll. Their name is Twisted Sister. And you could hear the crowd still chanting, Twisted Sister.